Welcome to another episode of Collector's Quest. This is it, the big one. We haven't done one in a while. It's So You Want to Collect for the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo is very near and dear to my heart. But before I go into why, I want to just give you a moment. If you don't know what the So You Want to Collect episodes are, it's where we take a system, we talk about how to collect for it as set collectors would. And, if you want to collect for the system, even not as a set, kind of what the ins and outs are. We give a high-level overview. On this episode, we gave a little bit too much detail. We also made a few mistakes, and I don't like our formatting a little bit. I want to change it for next time. So about the formatting, we kind of put too much of the obscure stuff up front, and we should have had the meat and potatoes there. So just get through that to get to the meat and potatoes of the episode. Also listen for those editor's notes from Tyler because they are important. It hurts me that we made those mistakes as this is my favorite system. But what are you going to do? Here we are. So if you haven't gone out and listened to the How I Got My Super Nintendo episode, you can go listen to that, and that will tell you why Super Nintendo is important to me. It's not important to this episode, but if you wonder why I'm so amped on this episode, this is the reason why. So here we go. Here's the show.
Welcome back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Johnny and Stefan, and you guys can say something, and then I want to go into what I'm thinking about.
Johnny, do you have a non sequitur? Because I was actually trying to think of one, and just nothing was coming up that was entertaining to me.
Nope, I got no non sequiturs today.
All right, let me talk about a crisis in my life, guys. That crisis is called Midway Arcade Classics 1 for the Xbox and PS2. So not even that long ago, 2 or 3 episodes ago, I was talking about the one thing that defines a game to me is it has a different title. So World Class Track meets Stadium Events, they're the same game, different titles. I count them separately. Screw publisher variants, screw all that. Those are all just variants to me. Midway Arcade Classics 1 is the re-release of Midway Arcade Classics on the Xbox and PS2 because they started numbering them. They're 2 and 3. So they went back and renumbered the first one.
Isn't it on GameCube too?
And GameCube, whatever.
Just saying.
No one has this on their list. I think VG Collect has it separately, but their lists are all fucked up. And intuitively, that's obviously a variant, but by the World Class Track meets Stadium Events rules, they're 2 separate games. And I think the software is exactly the same. There's not even a different title screen or anything. And I don't know what to do, Johnny. I'm in free fall, and I'm just my lists. How do I make my lists whole again, Johnny?
Just put them both on there and just forget about it.
Yeah, I'm really confused as to where the drama is.
The drama is I want consistent rules that I can apply to every console on what counts as part of the set. And with bullshit like this, I don't know what to do. Because I agree that this probably shouldn't be its own game. But then that also makes me want to go back and just say World Class Track Meet is just a Stadium Events variant. It makes no sense to have those as 2 separate games.
Agree.
If consistency is a thing you're looking for, perhaps this hobby is not for you.
What is Chavez 2 and Boxing Legends of the Ring, though? Are those variants or are those 2 separate games?
2 separate games.
So Madden and Espanol,
games on
Xbox
what
360 Spanish Maddens, are those separate games or variants?
I'm trying to lead him in, Johnny. I'm trying to lead him in. It's just not working.
No.
What?
No idea.
All right. I like starting an episode with a good does it count? And
hey, BT Dubs, there is a variant of that there for the Midway for Arcade Classics 1. There is they standardized the font after 2 and 3 were released, and there's a yellow covered variant.
No, I'm not a fan of that.
That's weird. I didn't even know that. I don't think.
Yeah, there you go.
That's on Xbox too, because I haven't seen that.
I don't know if it's on Xbox. It's definitely on GameCube.
Well, that's some good info for a game that nobody even cares about or thinks about.
I was excited by those when they came out So I bought them. And then I was mad when they fixed like the font. I was mad when the second one released and they didn't like line up exactly on the shelf. I was like, I hate when when sequential things do that. And then they came back and fixed it. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to go spend $20 more. Wow, this is the most boring opening I've ever fucking heard. Jesus God.
Nope, we're going to cut that too, and we're going to get right into our topic. So you want to collect for the Super Nintendo, Johnny.
Woo, it's been so long. This is our first So You Want to Collect in 2020.
God, what was the last one? It wasn't 3DO, was it? Because 3DO was like the first time I came on here.
No, it was Saturn, I think.
We did a So You Want to Collect 3DO before Super Nintendo or Game Boy? That sounds suspect.
No. When we had Stefan on before he was officially part of the podcast, we talked about him completing the 3DO set.
Yeah,
like
you brought me on
caveats.
to talk about 3DO. Was it not like a So You Could Collect?
It is, and if you look at my list of the ones we've done and haven't done, it's not listed as a So You Want to Collect, but it is in fact the first. When I was templating out your episode, that was the first template for So You Want to Collect.
So I was the proto So You Want to Collect.
Yep.
Wow.
You're my beta version.
Aw.
And actually, the last one we did was all 5 DSi games, and I don't even remember how that came up, but we definitely did.
That was like a joke one. I don't even think we listed that. But
I'm looking forward to our Virtual Boy 32X 2-pack.
Those aren't going to be. Those are all separate episodes. We gotta. In the day and age of content, we gotta have a 45-minute episode.
We're allowed to make a shorter episode. It doesn't have to be 2.5 hours every time.
Stop,
Tyler. You don't actually want that. You don't mean it.
No one wants that. The people do not want that.
Speaking of people, if you are new to the Collector's Quest podcast, this is a series that we do that we haven't done in a really long time. And I don't know if it's because of coronavirus or just other crazy things happening in the game collecting world. But we want to put these episodes out because just talking about collecting info about a specific console is a fun little primer for... Even though like 99% of our people don't need a primer to the Super Nintendo, but it's still fun to talk about all the variants and stuff, and probably will mention something you don't know about, we hope.
Well, it's also like good kind of evergreen content that, people who are new to the podcast can find. And if you are new to this podcast, you can go find this series and, learn about consoles. Or, if you don't care about those consoles, avoid them.
I also feel like we don't do these often enough because they tend to be a little bit more research heavy, but this console in particular was kind of easier for us to research than normal because the three of us know it so well.
I think we all have complete sets in one way or another about this.
Yes, and it's no shock to anyone who listens to this podcast. This is my favorite system. The Super Nintendo is it for me. If I had to kill every other set in here and leave one, it would be Super Nintendo. That's the end all be all for me. It's the one I've been willing to ship in things from Europe, which right now is an extreme pain in the ass. So I've kind of stopped doing that because I'm still waiting like 4 to 5 months for stuff to get here. But also, if it wasn't for Super Nintendo, there wouldn't be this podcast. Super Nintendo is the thing and the ideal I held as a child, which put me on this path, even though I had Nintendo and I played some Atari and I loved, my NES and I love a bunch of NES games. Super Nintendo was it. That was the one. It was like a definitive moment in my life trying to acquire one that, put all this into motion for me. So without this system, there's no podcast. My life would be vastly different if I had not had the Super Nintendo not come out.
I think as far as collecting goes, I may have more attachment to my 3DO set just because I'm a weirdo and I really love the set. But as far as like gameplay, like system that I love to play, it's definitely Super Nintendo. I think nine out of my top 10 games.
You have Super Nintendo stuff tattooed on you. You don't have any 3DO stuff tattooed on you.
Yet. Wait till I get Tia Carrera in the Daedalus encounter tattooed on my back.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Oh, wait. No, actually, if anything, it would be It's a Bird's Life. I could totally get the It's a Bird's Life.
Oh, my goodness. Do not do that.
I know we haven't talked about Shelley Duvall in a long time, but I feel like we're due. But yeah, I would definitely get the It's a Bird's Life art tattooed on me. That'd be pretty good, actually.
So just to bring us back to this episode. So what we do in these episodes is we just, like Tyler was saying, a basic primer. We'll talk about how many games it is, if it's expensive, the things to go through, what to look out for, and we'll go through all this in kind of not super deep detail. It's not completely surface level, but it's not a total deep dive. I mean, there's a lot of nitty gritty we could go get into on the system. We're not doing this. We're kind of taking you through, surface to mid-level detail about the system and collecting for it to start you on your journey or to teach you a little bit about it. So I think that's a good place to lead us from. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, and so I wanted to say that every time we do one of these episodes, like literally a week after, I think of like 10 different things I wanted to bring up on the episode. So all these episodes could have like some kind of part 2 to them.
Normally we say that we're going to do a part 2 and then we just haven't yet.
we should do some follow-ups, but they're more important than follow-ups to me are like getting through a bunch of the ones we haven't and touching back to that point of like why we haven't done as much. The one we do less episodes now than we used to do because these ones are so long, but also
we're effing busy. Can we just?
Well, I mean, that's true. But when we do it, like we're giving like a 2.5 hour episode, but the first year where I did a ton, each episode was like 40 or 30 minutes. So if you look at the time, it's like, it's the same amount of time as like a 40 episodes in a year versus like, 20 episodes in a year.
There was a period where we were cranking out like an hour and 45 minutes every week or week and a half.
Yeah. It was every like week and a half. Now it's, about every 2 weeks. Our listeners know what it's coming in. But also the landscape of video games shifted a lot. All the WATA stuff happened, and that was crazy. And so we like hyper-focused on that for a little while. And so we're watching that. And then coronavirus happened, like right at the tail end of that. Like it went all the WATA stuff happening immediately into the holidays, into coronavirus. And that kind of has been collecting for the last year, and we have been talking about that stuff, but it is a good reminder for us to, and that's why I made the list. We can now go reference it and be like, oh yeah, we gotta get one of these out, pick one, and we'll get it done. So with that said, anything else before we jump in, guys?
No, let's go in and out, 45-minute show.
In and out. Yeah, probably not 45 minutes. Yeah, cool. That was, we've gone like 12 minutes now. The people will be happy that we didn't start right away as we said we would.
Yeah, except for let's never ever hand it over to Tyler at the beginning again. That was a bad idea. What? I regret that decision.
The Midway Arcade Classics thing, that has been on my mind for like a week now.
I have no doubt that it's been on your mind.
All right. So, Tyler, bring us into this episode, please.
All right. So what's the Super Nintendo, guys? Have you heard of it?
Nope.
1991. Here it is. The Sega Genesis has been out for 2 years. Bam. Nintendo's like, we're going to make a 16-bit console too. It might even be the Western counterpart to the Super Famicom. And the debut of probably the most exciting console war of all time, the SNES and Genesis. It's the most interesting, probably the most vicious console war. And I would not say that's the most vicious. Have you seen forums or comment sections about let's say vicious in terms of
PS and Xbox?
The actual companies involved and their advertising, not the stupid fans.
Okay.
I would agree with that. Like first parties going after each other. Nintendo and Sega went after each other.
Well, and Nintendo is such a evil overlord.
Oh yeah.
During this time, Nintendo is not the hero of this story, sadly.
Yeah.
Nintendo is the hero of the 8-bit era, but they are definitely the villain of the 16-bit era and the way they tried to control the market and try and keep their, hooks into gaming.
Well, and they also tried to basically wholesale rip off Sega's edgy marketing campaign, right? That's when you started getting really weird Nintendo TV ads, the Play It Loud campaign and all that.
Well, I mean that's the typical marketing response when the Genesis does what Nintendo don't, right? Like that came out, It's like blast processing, which means nothing. It's just marketing.
Zero.
It's
absolutely
zero. Blast processing is a lie. There's no such thing as blast processing, but it's excellent marketing speak and something you can say. And look how fast Sonic is. All this to make the Nintendo look like the kiddie fogey system, and Nintendo was like, "Oh shit, we're losing kids." And this isn't today where Nintendo can be like, "We are as established as we are. We can blaze our own trail." Genesis was an actual threat and was beating them even in sales for a little while.
They had
it was neck and neck.
Yeah. Genesis
had
more market share at one point
for a brief moment, but Nintendo did take that back, and largely because Sega Japan. Not Sega of America, but Sega Japan was so bad about knowing how to reach the American market and force so much on Sega of America that they lost the console war. And the irony of also Super Nintendo and Genesis is they would both F over Sony, and then Sony would take them both down. So that's
for the
beautiful.
rest of eternity.
Yeah, you create your own villain who eventually kills you.
God, they really did.
They totally did. Both of them. It's the sweet irony of both Sega and Nintendo screwing over Sony to the point where they had so much knowledge and, research and development into video games that they just said, it, we'll make one. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful story.
And and I think that's why the Nintendo PlayStation has become as valuable and sought after as it was when it went on the auction block, is because it's like basically it represents like the most magical what if, like alternate reality of the industry, right? Like how different would things be today if that deal went through?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII had actually been an N64 title instead, or, and it was in development. There's actual stills of Final Fantasy VII on, N64 cartridges, or if they just went down the disc route, imagine if, and then Nintendo probably would have had to play to a more mature audience the whole time. There's a lot of what ifs. And who Nintendo spurned PlayStation for, or Sony for? Philips, right?
Philips. Yeah,
Philips.
They blindsided them with Philips, and we got some cool games out of that.
They really Nintendo didn't even get anything at the end. After that was all said and done, Nintendo didn't even really get anything out of that. And they maybe tarnished their corral of properties, and that the Mario and Zelda games that came out on the CDI were fucking hot trash.
Oh, Hotel Mario is so good, though.
Okay, it wasn't bad.
No, it's not good. It's not good. Zelda Adventure,
okay.
A Wand of Gamelon. They're just not. What's the other one? Faces of Evil or something?
Hobbit-looking art.
All of it is super bad, and that was like a deal with Philips that they had to let them take a couple of licensed games, and that was it. Terrible. Anyways. Now, that's your little history lesson of some of the Super Nintendo stuff. What else you got to say about it, Tyler? I know you got more.
So it came out in 1991, which was 3 years before the NES died and 2 years after the Game Boy. So we have this kind of 3-year period where the three most collectible Nintendo platforms are contemporaneous with each other. And I just think that's interesting. And that's where some of the best signage of the era comes out. And everyone wants those Game Boy, NES, and Super Nintendo signs. So it's just a really cool part of Nintendo history there.
There's even one of the rarest and largest kiosks out there for that era was a kiosk that had NES, SNES, and Game Boy demo games on it. I don't think that it was playable, but it had a laser disc that you press buttons and it would play demos for games, and it was a triple system kiosk.
Is there a Nintendo? There's a training video that shows that, and it's on the left side of that video.
Yep.
Yeah, that kiosk is badass. Does anyone actually have those?
Yeah, but more often you see the laser disc will come up for sale, or there was also a cartridge that was paired with that comes up for sale sometimes.
Everybody go on YouTube and look up all the Nintendo sales training videos until you find that one, but they're all pretty great to watch. Yep. All right, so Super Nintendo, obviously everyone knows what it is. Johnny, how many games are in the licensed set according to your list?
Well, 722, and there's some debate. Again, everything comes down to what you count, what you don't. So I've seen people say 721. I've seen people say as high as 725, but 722 is kind of what I have. And, there's one unlicensed game for it, so you don't have like that kind of conversation. It's more of like multi-cart stuff that messes up the count a little bit.
726 sticks out in my head for some reason, but I think that's all the stuff that we have on the edge cases that pretty much fills in all those gaps.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so a lot of lists include Super Noah's Ark 3D just because it's the only unlicensed game.
Yeah.
And it's hot trash. Don't feel the need to buy that.
Well, you should.
That's the one that's like a Wolfenstein clone, right?
It is, yeah.
Well, I just love that, like, from a technological aspect. So, like, the original cartridge was essentially like the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, where you could plug something in at the top, but you had to, because it was using you had to plug in a retail cartridge into that to get it to play, because it would use the lockout chip on the retail game to load the bootleg ROM or the unlicensed ROM.
Yep.
So I just thought that was
I love it.
I thought it was a pretty interesting way to get that done. Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact that you need another cart means it's barely even a game.
Yeah.
It's not a complete game. Is 95% of a game.
And it was like a reskin of like Wolfenstein, right?
It's got all the unique levels. I'm almost 100% sure.
So it was developed by Wisdom Tree and later sold to Pico, and Pico re-released it. So it's a thing you can find now as a complete game, but the original one you want is the Wisdom Tree box. And it's got the weird looking cart if you want it. And, it's a couple $100 if this is a thing that you want. But really, it's an oddity. It's a collection plus item that, something to shine your collection up. If you're like, look at all the neat stuff I got. That's the kind of thing that this is. But it's trash.
I legitimately only got it because there was only one. Like, if there were more than one unlicensed game, I probably wouldn't have.
Well, there are if you get into the aftermarket stuff.
Shut up.
Well, there is new unlicensed stuff, right? But we'll get there. Okay, so now since we've been talking about on the edge stuff here, like unlicensed stuff, what are some other on the edge stuff?
I think the big two that people will debate until the end of time are Donkey Kong Competition Cartridge and Star Fox Super Weekend, which are the two common competition cartridges on the Super Nintendo. And the reason that everyone debates these forever is because you could buy them from a Nintendo Power catalog used. So you would buy them used from the catalog as like a souvenir. I don't even know why they would sell these.
Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but I think it was just Donkey Kong Country that was in the catalog.
No, I'm pretty sure you bought Star Fox there as well.
Okay.
Tyler will fix this in editing and tell us
please.
Which one is correct.
Please edit and say which one is correct. I could have sworn that the Star Fox one was not released in the Nintendo Power catalog, but I could be wrong.
You can order it from the Nintendo Super Power Supplies catalog, Star Fox Super Weekend. You just got owned by SNES Central.
Aw.
Oh, sorry.
So here's the big thing. So everyone says, well, because you could buy it, it's part of the retail set. And all those people don't understand that retail is kind of being a retail item is a legal definition. You can sell promo items, and it doesn't mean it's gone through the full retail certification to get like a barcode and a rating and all the other things it needs to go through. It may have gone through part of these, but it didn't have approved packaging. Like, there's a whole list of things that happens when a company is developing and actually shipping a product to stores to be sold. I have talked ad nauseum about this back in the day on forums when people argued with me. They clearly have never been in factory production and seen how this stuff works, and I have. So you have approvals. There are things that must happen. They were sold. Yes, absolutely they were sold. Are they licensed retail carts? No, they are not. They are promotional items that were sold. And those are different. Those fall under different jurisdictions completely.
Suck it, nerds.
I personally don't care that they were promo games, and I don't care about retail sets either. The definition or the qualifier of retail just does not faze me, because Atari and Sega Saturn have mail order games, and I totally count those. The one reason I don't count these is because they were sold used, so they never were released in this catalog. You bought them used in the catalog. But I do own both of them because, honestly, I think that the high end of Super Nintendo is not super interesting, and these are the two interesting games to have at the high end.
I will agree with that, yeah.
They're cool. Like I just like
Are
them as
cool.
collectibles. I think they're neat.
Yeah, I think they're cool too. I own them as well. It's like I just went and said all that. Doesn't mean I don't own them and I don't think they're cool. They're like two of the coolest items you can get for the Super Nintendo legitimately.
So two things that I want to talk about. Well, one thing for each of these that I want to talk about is that Donkey Kong Country competition cart comes with a box that is like a Blockbuster style because it's a Blockbuster. It was a Blockbuster event. A Blockbuster style clamshell case that is green. Two things to know about that. One, the insert that goes in the case is a Xerox copy or a photocopy. So like me personally, I don't know that I would be comfortable today buying one, or at least comfortable today paying a premium for one, because the originals are photocopies, and I just don't trust that anymore. And about the green boxes, also know that Blockbuster did use those green boxes for other things, so you can find those green boxes like more commonly than like just like with the competition cart. The other thing I want to talk about, the Star Fox Super Weekend cartridge, is that it does also, sometimes you'll find it with a scorecard, and that increases the value of the bundle significantly. You can get the scorecards by themselves go for like $500 or something.
There's a $750 bounty on Video Game Stage, and the guy's been looking for a long time.
Yeah.
So
they used to be fairly common, but I think it's just a case of like the people who wanted one have them and are hoarding them. Or not hoarding, but like not selling.
And there's a pin for Star Fox Super Weekend, which is like $20, and they're everywhere because everyone who competed got one, I guess.
And there's a
and that's why
jacket.
I wouldn't necessarily count that as like part of like the item.
It's just cool stuff with Star Fox Super Weekend. This is the only time we're going to talk about it.
There's actually a oh god, I wish I could. If Nintendo Age was still around, I could point you to the thread. But there was a collector who just like was crazy about Star Fox Super Weekend, and because there's like employee aprons and promotional posters, and just like there's a glut of stuff. The vinyl banners, or not vinyl, but nylon banners. There's a glut of product around the Star Fox Super Weekend, much more than there was around Donkey Kong Country, which I think there was actually trading cards around the DKCC one too. But yeah, there's tons of product around that event.
Well, I mean, there was Pogs for Donkey Kong Country.
Hell yeah!
Whoa!
Just saying, there's a rare French Pog set that you can get about this Donkey Kong.
With the Donkey Kong Country competition French Pog set.
I don't know if it's about the competition specifically, but I just wanted to bring up Pogs for Stefan.
It warms my heart that you take an interest in the things that I am interested in.
Yeah, as much as I talk everything, I do look into everything you guys ask me to look into and take a look at. Because I'm a good friend, as much as I'm telling you guys are stupid. So good. I mix my terrible friendship with my good friendship. It's the only way to keep a balance. Okay, so another item on the edge that we should kind of get into is the Max carts. So what are the Max carts? What is Max? Military something combat simulator? What's the A stand for?
Arcade.
Multi-purpose arcade combat simulator.
What, is it really arcade? Yeah. I doubt it.
God, we're terrible.
It is arcade. It's multi-purpose arcade combat simulator. Why do we can't even make these podcasts
It's
anymore.
right there in the notes, you dumbass.
Oh my god, I didn't know.
We did write it down. All right, us. Okay. So there are a couple of different versions of this. So there's 1.1E. So it says it'll on the cart. These labels can vary too, and like what is written on them, because these were actually military combat training simulation carts that came with like an M16, or there was an M16.
Not supposed to have these.
It was a Jaeger AP-74.
Okay,
it's basically an M16.
So, Johnny, real quickly on that, since you are the military man of the three of us, like,
sure,
would there be like actual military, like government recourse? Like, could they come after someone, like in theory, if they wanted to?
Maybe, like if they deemed it. Usually, there's like a couple. There's like, God, what's the word I'm looking for? Where a certain amount of time passes and then It's over. Statute of limitations. Yeah. So yeah, I think there is like a statute there.
But the military also sells surplus, so it could have just sold it to the market.
On some of these, and it's relevant actually for the variant of this too, is on some of them they do have a sticker on the back that says, I forget what the actual verbiage is, but it's like says like property of Fort Hood or like return to whatever the base was. So it does say there is like verbiage on some of the cartridges saying that they're owned by the military and you should give them back.
Yeah, so there are 3 carts. There's simulator version 1.1e, and then basic rifle marksmanship program version 1994.0, and then there's the moving target simulator. And I think we have to, like, maybe Tyler will edit this in. I don't think they're all 3 the same, like with revisions. I think Target Simulator is actually different than the other 2, but I could be wrong.
No, we'll edit it in. I just know it's a game. It shows you a field and you shoot a bunch of gray targets and you're supposed to have a specific TV. It's like a tiny TV. It's like 19 inches maybe. And then you're supposed to sit like 8 or 10 feet away from it. It's all like very specific because it's like a military protocol kind of thing. And then just because we didn't explain what it is, it's basically a light gun game for the military. But the light gun is much more accurate than like the Super Scope. And it also seems like the dumbest idea ever, because why wouldn't you just train the military in a shooting range? Because that's what the military has. They have a bunch of shooting ranges. They don't have a bunch of Super Nintendos.
Because bullets are expensive.
Tyler,
Army budget is infinite. Have you looked at the United States budget?
As someone who used to do budgeting for the United States Air Force and submit to budgets to DFAS Denver, yes, I have seen military budgets, and I've helped make sure budgets are balanced at the end of quarters and for the fiscal year. So I know a lot about it, actually more than I should. And it's a horror story that I'm having PTSD thinking about right now. Okay, so let's talk about the 2 guns, because there's 2 versions of the guns that you would use for the simulator. One is like an M16 proper, and then one is kind of like still like an M16, but it's like a toy version of it. It's like a plastic shell, much lighter. But the one they wanted you to train with was obviously the one they like made out of the core of an actual M16, because that
I'm pretty
kept
sure they
the weight
just pulled
of
the
the
firing
rifle.
pin. I think it's just an M16 in which they pulled the firing pin.
So you can look more into that. This is like on the far edge.
It's a Jaeger AT-74, Stefan. Come on.
This is not like a licensed cart that you could buy. It was never sold at retail. This was for military use only item. It's very rare to find. Like, finding the carts is hard, and they're like usually between $1,000 to $3,000, depending what's going on eBay at any time. Finding the actual guns that go with them, a lot harder. Fewer of those made it out, and the ones that like also transporting one of these or shipping it on through the post office, it's a lot harder. You have to know the rules, because it's not like sending a zapper to someone. This thing looks like a gun because it's a gun.
Yeah.
It's it could very well be taken and destroyed by the post office.
And I don't know if it's still the case, but there were, when I was interested in looking, Amazon there was a guy that was trying to sell one on Amazon, and they kept pulling the listing because they don't allow sales of firearms, or at least they didn't at the time. So like it's difficult to sell one as well. So the whole transaction process for that gun is a nightmare.
Yeah, kind of. If you want one, you got to find where one is and go and get it yourself, and then figure it out, because shipping is probably not going to happen.
I've seen the carts around. You never see the gun. There's a cart that sold on eBay a couple months ago for $2,500. There was one at Portland Retro Gaming Expo that was for $2,000. And just to give their pricing on the competition carts, I would say they're $2,000 to $3,000 now. Star Fox has gone way up. I wouldn't be surprised if Donkey Kong was like $3,500 now. Both of those have increased in popularity a lot in the past couple of years.
They have, but also Super Nintendo, one of the things we'll get to later, Super Nintendo, as far as popularity, has been very flat lately. If for a while it was a super hot system, people love the Super Nintendo. It's a very popular console. Some people will say it's the best console of all time. I will make that claim because I love it, but
I will make that claim too.
there are people going to fight you on the PS1, PS2, and all these people have, there's an argument and a conversation to be had. I don't think it's like a lopsided case closed. Let's not talk about it. You're a dummy. But for something that is as popular as it is pricing is flat. You know, the coronavirus gave it a bump, obviously gave everything a bump, but interest, even though the price has gone up a little bit, interest hasn't climbed the way something like interest on the GameCube has or the N64. So, you know, I don't know if if just the high end, because they are the rarest of the rare things for the Super Nintendo, if they're still climbing or not.
And I want to say one more thing about Max. DreamTR contacted the developers, Sculptured Software, whoever they are.
Software. And
apparently they have he was told that they made 600 of each of the cartridges. So it's very rare.
That would be the lowest price. There's one of these on Xbox, isn't there?
When I was at THQ, we did make a military simulator that ended up becoming Full Spectrum Warrior. There's a military grade version of Full Spectrum Warrior out there.
Oh, is that what you're talking about, Johnny? Yeah, that's a thing.
It crashes 100% of the time when you throw a grenade into a truck.
Great.
And it's because when we reported that bug, it was towards the end of the project, and the Army producer said, "Well, you don't have to fix it because we're not training them to throw grenades into trucks."
That's wow. Okay.
All right.
Fun development fact. One other thing I want to talk about, Max, before we move on. If we haven't already deterred you from finding it, talking about how rare the cartridge is and then how crazy and uncomfortable to buy the guns are, that's actually not the complete Max experience.
Oh,
They came in a crate, and that's again branded like, you know, for the military. Don't steal this. And then within that crate is a foam insert, custom foam insert, with a 13, I believe, inch television, a Super Nintendo, a Model 1 Super Nintendo, the game, and some paperwork. I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I've seen the picture. I don't remember if the gun also fits in that, but just know that even if you do find the gun and the cart, that's still not complete until you find the crate with the paperwork and the TV, and yeah, there's a lot.
And so you're never going to find that. Like, out of the number of these that exist in the world, those are probably all in collectors' hands at this point.
Yeah, and there's maybe one or
two. Which might be like one.
It's still one of the most interesting oddities in gaming for me, because there's like an assault rifle that comes with this game, you know, if you can find it. So that's real interesting. Let's move on to some of the other Super Edge case stuff that you're not going to find. Tyler, tell us about the Campus Challenge and the PowerFest 1994 carts.
Johnny, I don't know anything about Campus Challenge or PowerFest 94. So Campus Challenge was, Nintendo had a Campus Challenge in 1991. It was like a college competition, sort of the continuation of Nintendo World Championships that is much less popular in terms of collector interest. Same thing with Campus Challenge 1992, which was Super Nintendo games. I think Super Mario World was one of them. Cannot remember the others. But Campus Challenge and PowerFest, they're not like NWC where they look like a cartridge. They're a giant PCB that mounts on top of the Super Nintendo. I think there's only like one or two of each of them, and you can't actually own them, which is why no one really thinks about them or cares.
There is a diagnostic test cartridge that looks identical to it, except for basically when they made it, they used that mold, but then they removed the top. So I'm pretty sure that the top of the cartridge is open and you can see the circuit board. I may be wrong on that, but
yeah, the top of the cartridge is just completely open to the air.
Yeah. So yeah, they used one of their like diagnostic, the diagnostic cartridges, and that's why it's gigantic.
If you guys want to see info on this, I would just go to SNES Central or SNES Central and take a look at it. It's basically like a 32X with the top off, and you can just see PCBs instead of...
Yep. It looks like a cartridge copier, like an illegal cartridge copier thing.
Yeah.
And same thing with PowerFest 94. And I've always heard these talked about, like probably on sites like Racket Boy, like, oh, this is a $25,000 game. And these days it's probably just worth infinite money. So...
Yeah, the thing is that they haven't changed hands in a really long time. I think so that's sort of like, you know, how much is it worth when the last time that it changed hands, you know, X amount of years ago was like $3,000 or something, which is like, you can't obviously it wouldn't be $3,000 today.
they're like, if this is a thing you want, then one, have big money, and then you're like, this is going to be very much a pay to play if you want to own this thing, because you're going to have to pry it out of somebody's hands with money, or that person's going to need money. You know,
so essentially, whatever purchase price you're going to find it at is probably going to set the new high.
Yeah, and there are repros of both of these that can be found, once in a while. So you can find them, and they just come in like regular carts. Yeah. But if this is something you're looking for, like to own the actual thing that there's like one or two of, good luck. Again, severe edge case, we're just bringing it up because when you talk about the super top end of the Super Nintendo, there's not a whole lot of things, and these are like two of the weird cases that exist.
And there are literally, I'm pretty sure the only people that would argue that these are part of the set are the people who own them.
Yeah, no one is coming out and saying these are part of the set.
Nintendo World Championships was a little different because they distributed the competition carts in two different ways, so there's more of a mystique, like, oh, these got out there. These were probably all just like destroyed or thrown out.
Right. This was for internal use only.
The fun thing about game history is that 99% of it starts with someone stealing from work, and that's 100% how these got out there.
So let's go on to test cards. Who wants to talk about test cards?
I can talk a little bit about them.
Sure.
I think there's 3 of them. They're essentially diagnostic carts to check to make sure that your Super Nintendo hardware is functioning correctly. And I know the one that I have is basically it's just it's not gamified at all, really. It just runs like test patterns and stuff like that to make sure that your Super Nintendo is functioning correctly. There are, I think, 2 versions of the one that has like it's got the they've got the little Mario with the screwdriver iconography on the label, and there's 2 of those, and then there's a third Super Scope one, and it clearly has the Super Scope on the label. I don't know what that does because I don't have one. That makes me sad.
Okay, what else? We already talked about Noah's Ark. Anything else we want to get into?
Yeah, Johnny, the last game, Star Fox 2 was released for the Super Nintendo Classic, officially released by Nintendo, guys. It's part of the SNES set. Not arguable. There are 723 games.
So yeah, now you need to own a Super Nintendo Classic to have the complete set, because Star Fox 2 got a US release. No, guys, who cares? If you want a Star Fox 2, there's people like repros of this have gone up. If you really want Star Fox 2, you can go get a repro of it, or you can just play it on the the Super Nintendo Classic. That's where to find it. And then we've got some like weird edge cases too, because in our count we've said 722 to 725, but there are some weird games which have same game, different name situations. So how do we count them? Right now, everyone pretty much counts these as individual games. So why don't you, Tyler, tell us about the fury inside of your soul when you think about Cannondale Cup and Mountain Bike Rally?
They've got different title screens at least. All right, so Cannondale Cup and Mountain Bike Rally are the same game. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. How come Wikipedia says Mountain Bike Rally also released as Cannondale Cup in North America, but Mountain Bike Rally was released in North America? I'm freaking out.
I have no idea.
It says release October 1994, release November 1994. Did they rename Mountain Bike Rally within 1 month? That is the dumbest thing. All right.
That can't be true.
I mean, there's enough mountain bike rallies out there where I can't believe that would be true. And also Mountain Bike Rally, like a strangely affordable game for like how weird it is and how it's part of like $1 million multi-cart. But the other same name game is Chavez 2 and Boxing Legends of the Ring. Chavez 2 is the Spanish language version of Boxing Legends of the Ring. And they also changed a couple things around. I think they took out like some English voice samples that they had. And that was released in Latin America and I believe the southwestern United States. And then the last weird game is Super Copa, because there's a English language version, at least the text on the cart. I've never put Super Copa into my SNES. It's a soccer game. And then there's a Playtronic released one with all Spanish language text on the cartridge at least. So there's 2 variants. The one you want is the one that looks like a guy is kicking another guy in the balls. This is weird because I think it was released in America, but there are some sources that say it might have only been released in Latin America. It's a very rare game in any case.
this like another note about this game, both of these games, no matter which version you find, they're hard to find in nice condition. And we'll get into why that is later, but like finding a nice one of these, especially the being kicked in the balls version, is tough to find.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Should we move on now that we've spent the longest time on what's not in the set?
Yeah. Now that you know what not to collect for the Super Nintendo, let's talk about how you should collect the Super Nintendo. Hey, Tyler, let's fight. How should you collect this, loose or complete?
However you want to, Johnny. I wrote loose because I think SNES cartridges are nice chunky boys, and they have end labels, and maybe the best looking cartridge when you just have the loose cartridge, maybe tied with NES. I don't think that the price difference between loose and complete is very big right now. It'll cost you maybe like 2.5 times on popular games to just get it complete. So for all your popular games, your Super Mario RPGs, your Link to the Past, you should just get those complete before the price difference increases anymore.
And I would tell you to buy it complete, not just because that's how my set is. Just in the current day and age of collecting and things going to WATA and people wanting to grade everything, and if you're ever going to have to sell it, people aren't scrounging around. I mean, there are obviously like a lot of collectors, and hopefully a lot of you guys are still just interested in carts and like picking that kind of stuff up. But, if you're looking to recoup your funds, then I would just say complete is where you want to go, and not just complete, but nice complete stuff, because that's just the way of like top end collecting. I'm not saying like go buy Cannondale Cup or some of these like weird games that no one cares about, World Cup Soccer. But if you're going to buy a Link to the Past, buy it in a box, buy a nice one in a box. Like any of the premier titles or, what is rare or expensive, like you should really be looking for this complete. And, if you want to have a mixed set of complete and loose, sure, go ahead. But just know if you're buying the good stuff, you should spend the extra money because you can get the money back out of it if you need it. If you're just buying it to play, just buy a loose cart.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. I'm talking kind of price agnostic when I say the loose carts are cool. I definitely think that the distinction in price between a loose and complete game is nowhere near what it could be, and almost definitely will be in the future. I do not think loose cartridge collecting is going to take off as much as nice condition cardboard. So,
yep.
Yeah, my distinction when I was building the set. Now, again, Johnny had actually said earlier before we were recording, like talking to me, saying that I would have done things differently if I were doing the set now than back then, and that might be true because of all of the weird economic garbage that's going on in this hobby. But my rule of thumb when I was putting together the set was if I cared about it, I would get it CIB, and if it was just something that I was buying to complete the set, then I would get it loose. That was my distinction, so that then when I had my cool CIB wall or section of my wall that was Super Nintendo, it was all stuff that I liked to look at. So that was my personal distinction.
And that's like a fine way to do it. There's no real right answer to this. You should be collecting for whatever reasons are, inherent to you. You got into the scene for a reason. Follow your path. However, if you're looking for advice, we've all done it different ways. So there's some things to look at.
The important thing is that if you collect loose cartridge Genesis, you're a monster.
That is true. So we don't have a strong opinion on this either way. We say skew complete, but we won't be mad at you as the Collector's Quest podcast.
Yeah, but Genesis definitely.
Oh my God. If you collect loose Genesis cartridges, we're happy to have you as a listener.
Yeah, we're happy to have you as a listener and hopefully try to convert.
No, you know what? No, get out of here. Get out of here if you're collecting loose
we don't have enough listeners just to be banishing people.
Fine.
What if you collect loose Master System games, which aren't even expensive?
Oh, I mean, at least they stack better.
You're right. Yeah, Genesis are probably worse. They're they're all slidey because they have those.
And different shaped carts too.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Yuck. Look, the EA cartridges next.
Yeah. Oh God.
No.
Yeah. See, at least Super Nintendo is uniform, except for one cart.
Except for Supernova's Arc 3D.
Yep. And most of them are gray, except for one or two. Yep. How much is this to complete, Tyler? Tell us.
Oh, just going based on the game value now prices, $21,000 for a loose set of the 722 games, or $65,000 complete in box, and that's honestly probably a little low because you're probably going to want it to be nice games, and obviously there's no condition things, and some of these games are worth a lot more in nice condition than they're not. But 4 times the price for a complete set.
I would also point out that that total does not factor in a lot of the edge case games that we've been talking about tonight. So
none of them, in fact, except for the same name, different game type stuff.
Yeah. So if anybody doesn't know, when you're looking at game value now, anything with a star associated with it means that it's not factoring into their overall evaluation.
Yep.
All right, Johnny, move us.
Ooh. I'm going to move us on. What are we going to talk about now? I don't know. I'm lost. No, hardware. No, I was kidding. Yeah, hardware variant says this is a boring thing to talk about because there's not a lot. So there's the 1 chip and the 2 chip and the mini, or SNES Junior, as some people call it, which I think might be the official name, but like everyone just calls it the Super Nintendo Mini.
Is there? I think like the official name is the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, like redesign or something. Not even redesign. I don't think there is an official name.
I mean, I think it just says Super Nintendo on the box, but there's
everyone calls
smaller
it the Junior,
version.
but I'm almost positive it's not actually
People
called the Junior.
Who calls it the Junior? I've never heard it call anyone.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like
or like the mini.
Here.
Well, now the SNES.
It's always the mini. I mean, it's always been the mini to me, and that's why people started calling the SNES Classic the mini, because they were like, oh, it's like a mini, but that's not true either. Could you imagine the riots had they designed the SNES Classic as the mini version?
Oh my god,
Tyler.
Yes.
Because we are notorious for mentioning things and not explaining what they are, would you like to tell the listeners what the 1 chip and 2 chip
breeze over the 1 chip
SNES
and 2 chip. So the original SNES console, the boxy one, has 2 motherboard revisions, at least 2 major motherboard revisions. The first one, is it the first one? Oh my god. So there's the 1 chip and the 2 chip. Did the 2 chip come first and then they combine them into 1 chip? Oh my god. Anyway, there's one that has 1 processing chip that does something and one that splits them off into 2 chips that do something. And the distinction is that the 1 chip consoles have better video output. And I believe that's for both composite video and if you do an RGB mod. So almost in every case, the 1 chip consoles are more desirable. And you can go to Retro RGB to look up how to look at your motherboard or how to guess based on serial numbers if you have a 1 chip console. But no matter what you're doing with it, you want a 1 chip. And if, like the people who have actually opened up and looked at their consoles, they charge like huge premiums on eBay. So you want to try to find one that no one has actually done their research on yet.
Yeah, don't search for that on eBay unless you want to pay. Like, do the research yourself so you can find a deal.
As an alternative, the SNES Junior also has superior RGB output, similar to the 1 chip SNES, and might be cheaper. I know I have one, so it was probably cheaper to just buy that.
You know, and it's interesting because if you look at like the NES Mini, right? Everyone hates it. It's the worst version, but this version is fine.
Yeah.
Like they're not, but I think there's some like weird like parallel that people think, oh, the NES Mini is garbage. That means the, SNES Mini is also garbage. And that's not the case.
So I've heard the SNES Mini described as a clone console of the original Super Nintendo because it's not exactly the same, like architecturally somehow. So some games might act a little different, or there might be like some very small compatibility issues. So if you're a complete purist, you should get the original SNES, I guess. Maybe it's like the SNES, the Genesis Model 3, except not a complete pile of garbage.
Unless you are doing the RGB mod, then it like literally doesn't matter. Once you RGB mod the Mini, it's identical as in performance to the 1 chip.
Is it? All right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Those are 3 versions, and then we have the most boring console bundles of any system in existence.
They really are.
Yep. Well, yeah, it is, because at least like for like the NES, you have like interesting box changes and designs. The Super Nintendo ones are super boring.
Oh, the
I hope
NES
you like
ones are
stickers.
the best. They look so.
I just said
I know.
That's what I said.
Yeah,
but but there's not a lot going on. Not a lot changes in an NES bundle, right? The Super Nintendo ones though are just like so blah.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So first, let's cover like the actual box revisions, right? So like there's a couple of revisions that depending on whether or not the kind of the earlier releases, whether or not the console comes with Super Mario World, that'll actually be a physical box revision. And then there's
Super
a couple
Mario World being the pack-in game.
Then there's a couple variants that as the pack-in changed, that they did change the box art. There's a Donkey Kong Country one that sticks out in my head, and there's a Killer Instinct one. Gentlemen, is there another one that you
There's
remember?
the sports bundle one. Then there's a bunch of sticker ones.
Yeah, so that's what I meant. Like if there was one any more that actually changed the box.
Well, just the sports one. It doesn't really change the box, but it adds on that like.
Yeah, so there's actually a couple of those. So like and a lot of them are done, or most of them were done at like Sam's Club or Price Club, those kinds of like retailers, where they actually, like, for instance, there's a version or a box revision that comes with a Super Game Boy, and it's like legit the regular Super Game Boy big box glued to the front of a regular, I think it's the one that comes with Super Mario World, that they just kind of glued it to the front of the box.
Yeah, but there is, like to say, there is a legitimate Super Nintendo set that is called the Super NES Super Game Boy set, which has its own box, and it's like one of the few where you will find a box art change, and it's probably the most colorful and interesting of all the box changes of the basic design.
So by and large, though, the reason that we complain about it is that the U.S. consoles, most of the quote unquote box variants are stickered. So the game or the console that came with Star Fox just has a Star Fox sticker on it, and there's tons and tons like that. Johnny did mention hold on, I got to look at it so that I get the name right. Johnny did mention the Big Score bundle. That was a not a box variant, but it had a smaller box with 3 games in it, basically taped to the top of it. So it from afar it looks like it's different. It looks extra tall because there's this other yellow and red box stuck to the top of it, and that comes with stunt race effects, Stanley Cup, and NCAA basketball. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing that's even more frustrating is that in other territories, specifically the UK comes to mind, anytime or almost anytime they did a pack-in revision, they did a whole box revision. The Star Fox Super Nintendo is gorgeous. Like obviously the console itself is
the Yoshi's Island one is awesome.
They're beautiful. And it just drives me crazy. Like if they did all this work anyway, what the hell, guys?
Yeah, like maybe it's like a weird territory because art sometimes, art couldn't travel overseas without different licensing.
Yeah, so, it's still frustrating.
It is because there was so much nicer. Besides the Donkey Kong one, we should mention we got a Killer Instinct one, which is probably the most recognizable of all the bundles because it like comes with the CD and the box is more tinted red and stuff. But really, Super Nintendo boxes are boring. That's what we're getting at. It's boring, and everywhere else got it better than we did. Boo.
Yep.
And I'll just clarify. So there's 2 main revisions. So the control set, so those have a bunch of sticker bundles. They came with Ken Griffey Jr. There's one that came with Super Mario World, one that came with Super Metroid, one that came with Zelda. And then there's the Super set, which is the bigger box, although still relatively small. It's smaller than an action set. It's a lot thinner. And that's the bundle that comes with Super Mario World. And those also had stickers that came with Star Fox and Mario Paint and Mario Kart. And probably Zelda. I'm almost positive it has to come with Zelda.
Yeah. And then the Mini also has the same. It's got Yoshi's Island. It's got a Metroid one. It has Zelda. It's all got the same kind of dumb stickers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
so. Just go get one console, get one super set, and be happy with it. Or be one of those weirdos who are like, I got all 14 supersets, guys. Here they are.
I can't imagine committing that much space for something like that.
I have like 4 Super Nintendo boxes, 4 or 5. So
got one.
I have a couple. I have a Star Fox one. I have the Big Score set. Which
who got you that Star Fox one? That's weird. Who
that was you, right?
Yeah, that was me. I did that.
Hey guys, Editor Tyler here. We did say some incorrect things in the section you just heard, and I think I've edited it all out. But I do want to state correctly what we said incorrectly. So in August to September of 1991, that was the Super Nintendo launch. It launched with the Super Set, which contains a cartridge-only copy of Super Mario World. Then in the summer of 1992, in order to compete with Genesis price drops, they released the Control Set, which is just the basic console with one controller for $99. And from what research I've done recently, hot throwback to the video game resources episode, I did a lot of looking through Usenet for this, the Control Set coincides with the launch of the Black Box Super Mario World release. So that Black Box Super Mario World release, while it's super cool, it is actually has nothing to do with being the original print of Super Mario World. There's a year's worth of copies of them that are all card only before that one. And then from what it looks like, at least based on catalogs, it looks like the Control Set was discontinued around 1994 because the Super Set was just so cheap by that point. So around 1994 is when, again, Super Mario World was just the pack-in with every Super Nintendo again. And so that kind of explains why the black box retail Super Mario World release is interesting, because there was only like a year and a half window where people would even have the opportunity to buy a Super Nintendo that didn't come with Super Mario World. All right, that's it. Correction over. Obviously, the thing we said wrong, we said that the Control Set was available at launch, which it absolutely was not. Back to this very long show. Can't wait to edit another 2 hours of it. Hey, Johnny. Hour in, how hard is it to collect for the Super Nintendo? Is this a popular system that people collect?
It is, but it's not that hard to collect for it, honestly, because it's sold tons and tons and tons. So all the best games are out in large quantities. Do you guys disagree with that?
No, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those, you have to spend money to do it, but it's not difficult. Like especially like right now, I think we Tyler was just looking at listings before we recorded and was like, everything is on eBay.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I was looking up games that like I knew in my head were hard to find. I'm like, whoa, there's so many incantations on eBay right now. Why are there? This was a hard game for me to find. So
yeah. So
now is a good time to be like, as bad as all the coronavirus spike is in gaming right now. Now is a good time to be snapping up Super Nintendo if you're interested, because interest in it is pretty low. And like when it peaks, it's gonna.
I wouldn't
go
say interest
so
in it
hard.
is pretty low, but.
I mean, lower
maybe
than
not where the laser focus is right now.
Okay, but lower than it has been, right? It's like a low point of interest for one of the most popular systems of all time.
Yeah, because when I heard you say 21,000 loose in my head, I was like, that seems really low. Like I know it's been higher than that previously.
Yeah, I don't know. When I see numbers now, I see like 65,000 for a complete in box Super Nintendo set, every single game, and I'm just like. There was a Mega Man that sold for more than that recently, right?
Yeah, full set collecting seems really reasonable compared to sealed, 9.8s on.
I thought we weren't going to talk about this.
So, anyways, I never made such claims. All right, so it isn't that hard to collect. You can find most of it. Also, there's no like absurd, weird stuff like stadium events on the system. The top end is kind of expensive, but all the top end kind of sits by each other in price relatively. The most expensive thing, is going to be like your mountain bike, your Speed Racer Mountain Bike Rally, Exertainment 2-pack, but all the other stuff is like relatively close and they can trade places. Aero Fighters, Hagane or whatever, they can switch around. I have to say them both for Tyler because he gets mad. So there isn't this like, oh my God, this one game is an absolute barrier. If you're into this set, and you're going boxed, yes, Mountain Bike Rally, Speed Racer, that 2-pack is expensive, but looking at the cost of that compared to the rest of the set, you're not like, well, I could never spend that much money into this set. It's not like looking at stadium events going, well, I could buy everything else and have spent the same amount of money and then still need to buy a stadium events. I still have like half the monetary value.
It's not 2/3 of the library's cost in one cartridge.
Yeah, so Super Nintendo is good in that way. That, also there's a lot of games, if you were just picking and choosing the best stuff, there's a lot of great games on it, and it's a console that has a good variety of game types. That you can get shmups, you can get platformers, RPGs, sports games. brawlers, but there's and some fighting games, even though you're kind of limited, on complexity on a lot of these compared to what's out there now. But there's a lot of stuff like in the middle that you can there's chaff that you could just totally forget about if you wanted to.
I will also say that it's one of those consoles where the middle is what gets you. The high end on Super Nintendo, there's a handful of games, but then it drops out of the high end pretty quickly. But like I remember when I was putting together my set and I was like 200 titles away, and it was all like stuff from the middle, so like $40 or $50 games. And you don't realize that until you're like, oh, I'm 200 games away, and that's $12,000.
Yeah. And the middle, and that's like all those games that are $50. Imagine they're $100 to $200 if you're buying them boxed. Yeah. And that middle, like Stefan was saying, it is a vast ocean, because I don't know if there's another set where the middle is so large. The average price point of that is like a flat line of like between $100 and $200, and it's this large mass in the middle of the set. And then there's like the bottom, which is like, but that plateau there for the middle is a huge, long stretch.
Right. And especially because the set itself is so large, like, cause you would say the same thing about Saturn, but it's like less severe because there's such fewer games in that set. But like Super Nintendo is such a big set that middle is hundreds of games.
Keeps going and going. Yeah, like when the bottom end is like 100 games and the top end is like 50 games, that means the rest of it is somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that's not, you're like, oh goodness, that's like 500, 600 games. How could that possibly be? But somehow it is.
No one collects sets anymore. Why are we even talking about this, guys? I mean, people just want to collect the good stuff.
Well, and we're going to tell them like what the good stuff is, but they should know about what the middle is. So let's get into
set collecting.
Yeah, let's get into games and prices and like what the launch games were and what the last game was. Tyler?
Oh no, I did this from memory, but I think I'm right. The launch games were Super Mario World and Pilot Wings, and that is it, right?
I thought there was 3 Super Nintendo launch games.
No. All right, you tell me what the third one was. I'm probably thinking of N64 because it was the exact same thing.
F-Zero. F-Zero?
Oh, yeah, never mind. So Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Gradius 3, and Sim City. That is a much better launch than I expected. 5 games, but...
It's an amazing launch. Like, those are like... I have a special place in my heart for Pilot Wings, but like F-Zero and Super Mario World and Gradius 3...
No, Pilot Wings is pretty awesome, too. I mean, even just to show off the technology, Pilot Wings is a sweet game. And then, Sim City. Yeah. Like, when Sony does a console launch, what they do is they get together like 20 games just to get something crappy from every genre, and it's like, here it is, and you're excited about absolutely none of them. But this is 5 quality games.
I don't think it bothered me as much as when I was a kid, but like I remember liking F-Zero when I was a kid, but as an adult, like the rubber banding AI is so brutal. Like everyone is always directly behind you, and it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, Mario Kart's the same way. Like that early rubber band AI in those games is
so brutal.
So like the interesting thing about this too is like when you were a kid, like these were the games that pretty much everyone had because when I was a kid getting this, kids didn't just have 40 games, you just like got a game or 2 here or there, birthday and Christmas.
Sure.
And those were the games you had. So, everyone had Super Mario World and F-Zero, that was like, and Pilot Wings, like everyone had Pilot Wings. I don't know what that was, but it may just cause the launch title. So I remember
3D, Johnny. You could skydive.
I loved skydive. I was so bad at landing on that target. It was ridiculously difficult. Pilot Wings is basically the like Wii Sports of the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
or the 1-2 switch. And
yeah, don't compare it to that.
I mean, it is. It's basically a tech demo, right? Like they wrap some games into it, but basically, like this is what a Super Nintendo can do. We want to show you.
Yep, they're like, hey, we have this thing called Mode 7. Let us show it to you.
Okay, while I'm making corrections here, just a minor correction. Wikipedia says that the 5 launch games were Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, SimCity, and Gradius 3. There are numerous other sources that say it was just Super Mario World, F-Zero, and Pilot Wings. And indeed, if you go back into Usenet, you will see plenty of people complaining that there's only Super Mario World and 2 other games available, those 2 other games being F-Zero and Pilot Wings. So, just to be clear, I'm pretty sure SimCity and Gradius 3 would be considered launched window games released shortly after the console launch.
That was the launch, but what was the last game, Tyler? Tell us again about Star Fox.
Again, from memory, is Frogger in 1998, I'm going to say, which was a piece of crap Majesco release.
Yep.
Frogger, like what? It's such a weird game to end a console on. And then, of course, Star Fox 2 in 2018, whenever the SNES Classic came out. Guys, Star Fox 2 is the real last SNES game.
Johnny, why does The Lion King keep coming into my head? Is that the last European release?
Maybe. I don't know, honestly.
When did The Lion King come out? Like 96? I feel like that.
No, the movie
98 would be very late for that. I'm going to just Google 1998 SNES games, and then we'll cut this out, and we'll look smart.
Okay, cool. So while they're doing this, I will tell you guys.
It was the only game released in 1998 was Frogger, and the one before that was in November 1997, Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games. So there was almost a year between the last 2 releases. Wild. And it was Frogger of all things. Imagine being hyped for that.
So I was just going to mention, we talked about the overall price of the system, but average price of a game right now, according to Game Value Now, if you're looking at a place, it's about $88 for a complete in-box game. That's the average price of a Super Nintendo in-box game is $88, which is ridiculous because we finally gotten to a point where the games are about what they cost at release, because Super Nintendo games would range anywhere from like $50 to $90 back in the day on release. So,
and if you remember, that officially makes them a collectible, according to Harry Rinker.
So, yep, now they cost more than the retail cost. But the loose ones are still pretty expensive, around $29. And if you're wondering what the coronavirus spike did to it, it was about $75 a game, $76 a game before a spike, then up to $88, and loose was $22 up to $29. So, it seems not
downright tame compared to like PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2, PS1, all these things, like GameCube, or, even like Xbox, where, I mean, sure, the average cost of a game is like $16, but it was $8 before that. So it doubled, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Johnny, I figured it out. Lion King was the last PAL release on the NES.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry, I just needed to get that out there.
No problem. Okay, so we've gone that. Now let's talk about the most expensive games. We already covered the competition carts, but what is the high end for the ones we say you have to collect if you want the whole set? Someone go into that for me.
All right, so I'm just going to list off a few of them, and they haven't changed in like 20 years as far as I know. The Exertainment Double Pack, Mountain Bike Rally Speed Racer, is by far the most expensive. I didn't even put prices. I'm guessing that costs like $1,000, $1,500. And then Aero Fighters and
Complete
Hagane.
box is $25, and loose is about $1,000, and that is the same price as it was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I paid $900 for mine loose, like 5 or 6 years ago.
All right, let's play a game. It's called Tyler Gives Prices Off the Top of His Head, and Johnny corrects him.
Sure.
Aero Fighters, an arcade port that just for whatever reason is super rare. It's I'm gonna say $700 to $900. That's kind of a game that is really hard to pin down a price on because it sells for a different amount every time.
Yep, $600 is what they have it at, and $1,500 complete.
All
yeah,
right.
But the I think yes, the poster on everything makes a difference, but I think that particular one is known particularly for swinging wildly when it has the poster with it.
True.
If Aero Fighters is less than half price to get it complete instead of card only, get Aero Fighters complete if you're doing that. Hagane, famously made famous by James and Mike Mondays on Cinemassacre and spiked from like a $20 game to a $300 game. Now it's like a $600 game. And people think it was rental exclusive, but we don't know, right?
I have never seen any proof to that effect.
Yeah, never heard anything about that. The thing is, a lot of them have rental stickers on it. A lot of the boxes are completely decimated. and a lot of the labels are in super bad condition, which just
And it's
seems
also-
like an unfortunate side effect of a poor condition label to begin with, and being a game that was largely rented.
And it's also very common to find it without the manual.
Yes,
That's like
exactly.
another indicator. So there are indicators, but that's correlation, and
But you'll
that
see
does
like
not
a
prove anything.
near mint complete in box game. It's like this. There's no way this was a rental game when you look at some of
Yeah.
these complete in boxes. So
$700 or $600 complete, or $600 loose to $500 in that range, and about $1,800 complete. But I've seen it for less than that. I've seen it down at like $1,200 and $1,300 complete.
yep, and that's another super condition dependent, just because it's so hard to find in really nice shape. And I know that because I've been looking for one for like a year and a half.
And
If
a
you
lot of
listen to
the,
this
a lot of
show,
the
yeah.
manuals, a lot of the manuals have like mom and pop rental stickers on them too. In fact, occasionally, at one point I did have a boxing manual for Hagane. I ended up trading it off for a Game Boy fiber optic sign, which is now like a $4,000 sign. So I did okay on that. But occasionally I will see my manual floating around, like as it's traded around, because it's got a very specific like mom and pop sticker on it. I just think it's funny.
Super Copa, also on this list, has been there forever. I'm going to say that's a $200 game. There are 5 copies on eBay. Wow. All right.
$150.
$150. Yeah, go pick up a copy of Super Copa. I thought that game
Dude, I would
was
I would
pretty
buy
rare.
that game. Yeah, I would buy that all day at 150.
Is that
Yeah.
like a Redbox Wonder Dog situation where it just happens to be flooding the market right now and no one needs a Super Copa?
I don't know, and also I don't know if that like is including the Playtronic version taking down the price at all or what, but a complete in box version is around $1,500. And again, this is one of the ones where the manual drives a premium because it's so hard to find a manual for it. Also, because this is a made in Mexico game, it is always trashed. To find a nice copy of this game is so hard. So if you are condition picky on this one, just put it in your search now and, fight for the best copy you can, and know that, you're probably going to have to buy one you can live with and then look to upgrade later, or it could be years.
So I'm just going to say someone's going to buy it now. There's a $155 Super Copa and the label looks awesome. The only issue with it is that the back of it is completely yellowed, but the label is what's always messed up on it. Like to the point where I'm not even looking at it that hard. Like, is this a repro label? Because that label looks too good. Maybe that's why no one has bought that yet.
We should talk about back swaps at some point. Sorry.
We have it.
That's in the end of the episode.
Okay.
Earthbound, I don't know what that is. Pocky and Rocky 2.
Earthbound is one of my favorite games. No.
Yeah.
Go back. Thanks. Earthbound. It's traditionally a big box. In fact, the only retail version of it is a big box. Things to know: it doesn't come with a standard size manual at all. There is no standard size manual. It only comes with a guide size manual. In the back of that guide, there are 6 scratch and sniff cards. You really want to make sure that those cards are still in there. Otherwise, that manual is largely seen as hot garbage. The other thing you want to watch out for is that the insert the white cardboard insert that holds the cartridge in there is often reproduced. Now, having said that, most people that I talk to don't really care if that's an original piece of cardboard versus a reproduction piece of cardboard. They're white, so they do discolor with age, so that's an easy tell. I'm not honestly familiar enough with it on top of that to know like what the intricacies are between the differences of a new one and a vintage one, but again, the color of the cardboard is probably a pretty decent giveaway. That one also is really difficult to find with the outer box in decent condition. And there is I know we're going to talk about display only boxes later in the podcast, but I'll just mention this one here. Again, there is no regular sized Earthbound box. So if you find one within a regular sized box, it's either a reproduction or a display only demo box,
which also has reproductions which is ridiculous. Just something about that insert. I would definitely skew to try and find, even if you pay more, because people are going to care about that eventually. It's going to be one of those things that's going to be like the cards in the back. Like if the 2 copies you're looking at, the difference is $50 for the cards or not having the scratch and sniff cards, pay the $50. If it's a $20 difference between, not having the correct insert and having a repro, get the one with the right in. You're going to be happy you did later. I can promise you that.
Fair.
So,
and like, I don't tend to, now granted, I don't look for them every day, but I don't see a ton of like insert only listings for the like original insert.
No, I think a lot of those are gone because people pull them out, folded down the box and then got rid of that piece of cardboard a lot. So it's going to be a piece that's hard to find, and pieces like that are hard to find, wind up being worth money. That's just how scarcity works.
Johnny, this list of most expensive games is super boring and it's never shaken up as long as I've been collecting. Hagane shot up there. That was 8 years ago now?
Yeah, so a couple
We'd be having that same conversation with NES, though.
No, NES is crazy now. A sticker seal Mario complete in box can sell for $25,000?
But we're not talking about that, because if you're talking about sealed Super Nintendo games,
not sealed.
Not at all.
Complete in box Mario can sell for $25,000 now.
Yeah, like
a mint condition Zelda can sell for $1,500 for the first.
Yeah, that has not happened to Super Nintendo. There has not been this. The investor wave has not gripped Super Nintendo yet. The thing that they're really focusing on, and isn't at the top of this list, is original, Super Mario World in a nice box. Those are going up in value and will continue to go up in value because it was a pack-in, because they didn't produce that many, and then eventually it got to just being a player's choice. That's going to be like the game that people latch onto, and because it's, I don't know why I even need to say it. It's Super Mario World. It's one of the greatest games ever. And I'm not a guy who hands down loves every Mario game. Super Mario World is a masterpiece of a game. And, it's a launch title that helped define the system and Mario games going forward. So, and it's got a box that is scarce. So, do the math if you're a collector on if you should get that, in your midst now rather than later.
So we were going to talk about that in uncommon games that you should buy now, but it's a good time to bring it up, I guess. I guess Super Mario World Black Box might edge out into the most expensive list, but probably not. There have been a couple crazy sales lately, but usually it's been more in the 150 to 300 range historically, at least.
People are noticing it more. And as those investors come over, it's not getting cheaper. That's
compared to NES prices, however much you'll pay for a fucking balloon fight, Super Mario World Black Box is the better buy right now.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And there's some other weird games in here. You can go down the list a little bit and find funning games, and the funning games and Final Fight Guy. These are kind of the same thing a little bit, that they are both hard to find. Final Fight Guy is an actual rental exclusive. But both of these, the manual commands a premium, a very big premium. It's hard to find. They don't pop up that often. Or if they do, the game is, going to fetch much more. So if you have the manual, especially for Funning Games is a game that's Final Fight Guy or Guy, however you want to pronounce it, it's $150, $200 cart. The complete in box game is $1,200 to $1,000, but Fun and Games is a $25 cart, and then suddenly it's an $800 game if it's complete. Yeah. And that's not the box, because you can find it just in the box for $250. So the rest of that's manual. The manual is by far the most expensive component here.
Yeah, very similar to Sculptor's Cut.
Yes, it is the Sculptor's Cut of the system, and hey, it's also a trash game. If you go buy if you buy the Genesis version of Fun and Games, you can get it for $30 and move on with your life if you just want to play it. So that's the tippy top end. The other one that's on the tippy top end, but it's a variant, is Zombies Ate My Neighbor, the box art variant.
Yeah, did we ever decide that was a Mexico release?
That's just the speculation around it. It makes sense if it is, but who knows? Who really knows?
It is by far the superior box art. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's got a oversized caricature of the main character kid, and he's got a super soaker or something, and he's shooting a zombie with it. It's awesome.
I don't know.
Thought you were
I like both box arts.
It's fine.
So
Fine. One's a painting and one isn't.
Tyler hates the basic art for it. I like it because it's very pulpy and it's it speaks to a specific genre and era, and I like that about it. It conveys something to me. And the other one, while I think the cover is cool, it doesn't convey the genre or the era.
I have fondness over that cover just because I feel like it was something that you and I were both after when we first started to hang out, and that first Portland we were together, there was that one that sold in the first 5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, for $300.
We were both really
salty.
We were both super salty about it.
Yep. So there's other games in this top list too. You could go down, you could talk Pocky and Rocky 2, Metal Warriors. There's some other stuff in here, but largely, as Tyler was saying, the top list isn't, it hasn't changed. So if you knew what the top games were 5 years ago, guess what? Still the same. Nothing, no big shakeups yet. So might be something we have to revisit if investors.
It'll be really exciting if something weird happens and it's Super Metroid is a top 10 most expensive SNES game. I don't see that happening, but
it should be, and there's some
stuff.
interesting variants. There's an interesting variant for it. There's the Canadian version where for Nintendo only is different. People don't care. People don't care yet.
I make sure I have none of that Canadian garbage in my collection.
Yeah.
Canadian games are a step above greatest hits to me.
I don't know if we'll even when the high end market sort of catches up with Super Nintendo being awesome. I don't know that we'll even see a wave of where like that we saw with NES, where all of the CIB stuff is getting graded and is super expensive for dumb reasons, and because I feel like that already happened with the NES, and people already took a bath on all those games. So I think maybe I was just thinking about whether or not I think really history would repeat itself exactly the same.
If people are going to pay $9,000 for Atari games that were bought just 3 months ago for $40, sealed.
Yeah, but within 3 or 4 sales of that, it was down to, which is still, it's not to say that it was a good deal, but I think the third one that sold for $2,000.
Man, if I could take $40,000 or $40 and turn it into $2,000, and not doing as well as the other guy, I think I'd still feel pretty good.
No, for sure. I get what you're saying.
But, also I think that's going to happen is people will start to identify the awesome stuff for Super Nintendo. And unfortunately, the top end stuff, while those are good quality games and they're kind of rare, it's not the Metroid. It's not the Super Mario World. So, it doesn't have that cross section of being, one of the best games on the system and also very recognizably Nintendo. It doesn't scream Nintendo. So I think your Metroids and your Marios and Mario World 2 and things like that are due for some price increases, and eventually might edge some of that stuff out if investors ever care. And it will be super condition dependent. So that's all I got on that. So now I guess we can move on to, are there actually games that aren't in this top list that are kind of rare, or things that are in the set that are rare that people aren't talking about? Tyler BRB'd us.
Oh, okay. I think he's still BRB'd.
Oh, I thought that was you who BRB'd.
Nope. We can start talking about the poster phenomenon, or really even one step further than the posters. Just game specific inserts in general are difficult and expensive, but posters by far. I'd mentioned Aero Fighters earlier. The Aero Fighters poster is ridiculously expensive. I see Tyler's cursor moving, so I think he might be back.
I am back, as I said on Skype. One of the Ren and Stimpy games, Johnny will know which one I'm talking about, has a poster that I think is hundreds of dollars.
Yep.
You won't tell us which one, Johnny.
Do you want me to tell you which one?
That's what we do on the podcast. We give out information to spike and hype things.
I'm not telling anyone.
Is it Time Warp? Because I have that seal.
You need it, Johnny?
No, it's not. It's not Time Warp. Is it
Vidiots?
It's not Vidiots.
Ooh, we're getting closer. Fire Dogs?
It is Fire Dogs.
Oh, it's Fire Dogs.
It's not Buckaroos. Buckaroos is the expensive one on the NES. On the Super Nintendo, it's just kind of expensive.
Oh, man. How do you keep
Fire Dogs is the God. People want to say that was like a rental exclusive too. I don't know if that's true or not, but Fire Dogs is the Ren and Stimpy game of note on the Super Nintendo for being expensive.
All right, and then the other thing I want to call that is quote unquote actually rare would be nice condition games that were made in Mexico, which we have touched on. Mega Man X3 and Hagane immediately come to mind. I'm gonna say maybe the rarest thing on Super Nintendo that's in the basic set. If you have a mint condition copy of International Superstar Soccer, I have never seen one that's not complete in box, and that is a really hard game to find complete in box. Just the cartridge alone, it wrecked every time. Everyone I talk to about this game, like hardcore collectors who collect Super Nintendo, they're just like, yeah, I had to settle for like an 8 out of 10, and like I overpaid for that 8 out of 10.
It's like every copy went through a bed of razors before it shipped.
I don't know what happened. They made a label that just deteriorates when it's exposed to air. Crazy. International Superstar Soccer Deluxe, also a really hard game to find in nice condition, but at least there's a lot more of those out there.
So dumb. And that game is so dirt common, in like PAL and stuff, and you can find them nice over there. It's just America that are... North America, I should say, that you find them in such condition. It's very sad.
Yep.
So let's talk about some more. I said it briefly, Three Ninjas Kick Back is a hard poster to find. Another caveat with posters is depending on who released it, this goes to the Mexico thing. Like if it was a Majesco release, if it was a later print, not all of them had posters. Some prints, like they start to pull inserts and stuff out. So depending on which one you have, it also makes for a lot of improperly married parts in games. Or you think you're missing it, you aren't, or you have a poster that you picked up, but your version isn't actually a version that ever came with the poster. A lot of that happens in Super Nintendo, and people have not done the deep dive like they have with Nintendo to suss out exactly all the versions that should have this and which factories they came out of.
Everyone get out there, document info.
Yep. What else? I know you want to talk about Super Goal 2 and Syndicate and Time Tracks.
I mean, I just put a bunch of games here that are like uncommon. I can't think of any. There's not like a game on Super Nintendo that's like, oh my god, this game is rare. Go buy it. It kind of the expensive games mostly mirror the rarity of games, I would say. So I put Hurricanes, I put Chavez, Super Goal 2. Syndicate is actually pretty hard to find. I had a really tough time finding just a cart because I didn't want to pay for a complete box one. I would just say buy the complete box at this point. And then Time Tracks and Incantation, just weird games that are kind of hard to find. Oscar is another one.
So what you'll notice about, like, because of the middle of this is, again, not totally fleshed out. So it's not that we don't know. It's that people haven't, like, put the focus and the total, like, frenzy on Super Nintendo. So that wide swath of the middle, everything just kind of bubbles around near each other until someone actually like a serious run happens on it. We won't know if anything is more or more rare than it's currently listed at. I think a lot of this stuff sits in the middle because people know it's kind of hard to find, but it's not too hard to find because nothing on the Super Nintendo is too hard to find at this point because there isn't any delineation. It's just like, oh, these are games that you'll have. You'll either buy them loose or you'll try and get them in the box, and that's a little harder. It's not like, NES right now where people are like, well, I need the first print that comes with the matte black sticker. None of that is going on. So we might get to a point where that happens. Not that there's sticker seals, but you might get to a point where print matters and stuff, and then you'll see where that, when it didn't have a poster and when it did, starts to matter more.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of that with the Made in Japan versus Made in Mexico stuff. But it's not like crazy like it is on the NES right now.
No, so like generally you should skew. People prefer the not Made in Mexico stuff. Get the Made in America, not because they're racist, but because you just generally find nicer labels. Usually the
They might be racist.
Yes, they could be racist. I'm not saying they're not. That could be a driver. It isn't for me. Usually the condition on the Made in Mexico stuff is just worse. So, and that's the same on Genesis as well. So you find the nicer labels there. Also, avoid Majesco releases if you can, because there's a bunch of, we'll talk more about that, Majesco came out and printed, and they've got like black and white manuals versus color manuals is a thing. So if you're buying this stuff, try to get the color manual, try to make sure your parts match, and, try to buy the earliest version you can. Look at multiple copies, see if all of them have a poster, because so many Super Nintendo games came with posters and it's not really well documented. A lot of games came with, like, even if it wasn't a game specific poster, came with some sort of fold out that turned into a poster of something. So be very careful when you're looking at this stuff. And, like I said, spend a little more. It's one of my main regrets with Super Nintendo that I wasn't more picky early. If I was redoing it now, I would be very, very picky, not just on condition, but making sure I got posters, because that's where the premium is. And I would be looking at every game several times and in sold listings to make sure I know exactly what is supposed to come in that game. Like reg cards too. It's another thing that people obsess about, like Tyler and Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about getting everything 100% complete. It's just like when I do want a game like Chrono Trigger that's like a 10 out of 10 all-time classic, like I'll pay more for the condition and I'll pay more to have it complete.
But there's like so many little dumb things. Like so many games came with like a trading card or a tattoo or, just like dumb stuff you did not think about, like that it says right on the front of the box. And if you don't get it, you're probably not going to find it, so like keep, if you're going to own the thing, like if you're going through the trouble of set collecting, you could buy a big lot and do it. But if you're being picky, which, and you're just buying the good stuff, don't just be picky, be extra picky. That's,
I'd say especially now, because if like prices are moving between variants on NES, eventually prices will move between loose and complete, like CIB and 100% complete games, 7 out of 10 condition and 9.5 out of 10 condition. These prices are going to expand, so you should go for the better, more complete stuff now. Right.
That's what I'm saying. The difference of $10 to $20 now from like what you would look at and say this is an 8 versus this is a 9, that $20 difference now is going to be $100 difference or more later, especially if it like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That's the world of collecting we live in now, where you got to be this picky and like think about if that money matters to you. If you're just going to put it on your shelf and be happy with it, like I am, I don't have a bunch of graded stuff lying around. In fact, I have no graded games in my room as of yet, though I've thought about grading a few, some of the ones I really like. But, if you're going to do it now, or if you've got an eye for that maybe later, now is the time to get really picky. So let's talk about in-demand games and key franchises. We just talked a lot about like the incidental rush, so some of this we'll go over, but Super Nintendo has some key franchises in it.
I would say if like you probably already know all the Super Nintendo games if you're listening to this podcast, and we're not going to go into every single game. I will just very quickly and broadly say Super Nintendo is primarily known probably for its RPGs, its platformers, its updated sequels to 8-bit Nintendo games, and the introduction of at least a couple of new Nintendo franchises. So RPGs, obviously, Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 2 and 3, Super Mario RPG, Breath of Fire, Lufia. There's a bunch of smaller ones beyond that. Johnny, do you have anything to say about the RPGs?
No, those are the big hitters. Those are the ones you should know about.
And platformers, like half the console is platformers, but the big ones, Super Mario World 1 and 2, Super Mario All-Stars, Donkey Kong Country 1 through 3, Contra 3, Castlevania 4, and maybe the Super Star Wars series, just because it's a Star Wars game, not because it's the greatest games ever.
Where would you put Demon's Quest?
Sure, why not? Like that's more, I guess that's on the SNES Classic, huh?
Yeah, I said Demon's Crest.
Yeah, Demon's Crest, the sequel to Gargoyle's Quest.
Right.
Gargoyle's Quest 2 is the sequel to Gargoyle's Quest.
Yeah. But it's also just in that Ghost and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghost franchise. So it's just like of key franchises, if you're looking at a game that people are going to identify very specifically to this system. And it's an amazing game, like something you should look at.
Yep. And that's like slightly more uncommon and more on the expensive side. And I'm just saying that because literally all these other games we're talking about are like dirt common. Like even the expensive ones like Chrono Trigger, like there's a lot of Chrono Triggers out there.
Absolutely. There's a lot of Final Fantasy 2s, but there's not a lot of nice Final Fantasy 2s.
Okay, I've never even noticed that. I'm sure there are, and people just aren't having them leave their collection. Because if you have a nice Final Fantasy 2, you're probably a nerd, and you're like, this is my game. It's never leaving my shelf.
Absolutely.
That's what all RPG people are like.
Yeah.
Because you dedicate so much of your damn time to this game, you're like, well, I guess I'm keeping this on my shelf forever now.
Yeah, I told you.
My 120 hours I put into that.
When I started collecting, the first thing I was like, I need to rebuy all the, like, I want to buy all the games I ever beat, which was like a big list I made. But then I was like, but first things first, I have to get like all the RPGs. And like, there was like a few childhood classics, Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Castlevania. And then it was like, oh my God, I need all the RPGs. This is the list. Everything else, even Contra and Mega Man, those were all tertiary compared to, I spent so much of my life in this. I need this back. And I want them in boxes.
I'm literally looking for like the item for Path of Exile I can buy just because there's like hundreds of hours of my life in that game. Like I want something to identify with it. There's like a crappy comic and like an art book. Like I don't know what I want yet, but I want something for Path of Exile. So I totally get the RPGs holding their value so well.
Did you talk about updated sequels yet?
No, I did not.
Okay. So there are some updated sequels that are key for people to know about. Super Punch-Out, Zelda: Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Castlevania 4 is another big one that people don't get.
I mean, technically Mario World, Contra 3, all the platformers also go in this category.
Yes, but there's some Kirby. What is it? Kirby's Dream World.
Dreamland 3 and Kirby Superstar are here. Although Kirby Dreamland 3 is really the updated sequel that you'd be talking about. That's the one I'm talking about. So, I mean, and there's a lot. Super Nintendo has a lot of sequels, but probably, this is the thing about it. It doesn't have enough sequels, as far as what it is. Like there's not like a good Mario sequel. There's not another Zelda sequel. Like for a system that lasted as long as it did and as popular as it is, it should have more sequels of key franchise games, and it does not. So I think that's like the weird part is like a lot of the super good stuff came out like really early on and then didn't have sequels. Like I guess Mario World, it had Super Mario World 2, and that is another fantastic platformer. We didn't get a bunch of Donkey Kong Country.
Zelda Link to the Past, Super Metroid didn't get a sequel. Like F-Zero, like what happened? Star Fox.
Nintendo doesn't like making F-Zero sequels. Let me tell you something, Johnny. They're done with F-Zero.
Unless you go onto the GBA or the GameCube. But also, there was some new franchises. You put Star Fox and F-Zero, and you put Donkey Kong Country up in the platformers, but Donkey Kong Country is also it started here. Like Donkey Kong is a thing, but Donkey Kong Country is its own franchise. Same with Mario Kart. Like is another big deal.
I didn't even put Super Mario Kart on here.
Yeah, this is like where Mario Kart started. Like things you think of as like tentpole Nintendo stuff. This is where it started. Also, like some of these games like Super Metroid, Zelda Link to the Past, they're considered not just the best games on the system, but some of the best games of all time. And this is the system that housed them. It's like set the gold standard for all of these series from here on out. You might love Mario 64, but, Super Mario World was the one that set the standard, like, to begin with. It wasn't Super Mario Brothers. Like, that's a great, fun game. Mario 3, yes, but Super Mario World, like, took it to the next level. Same with Link to the Past. There's been other great Zelda games, but, like, that was the one that said, okay, everything else, like, this is the one that is so key to the development that without this, you can't move forward. So, Super Nintendo did that to a lot of franchises, even if they were sequels, just had these giant impacts on the video game landscape and on Nintendo itself.
That's true. And that's why we can categorically prove. You go search IGN, GamePro. I don't even know what websites are out there anymore. You look for like their top 100 games of all time, and like half of their top 10 list is going to be Super Nintendo games. And that is categorical proof that moving to 3D ruined video games forever.
Oh.
So thanks for listening to Collector's Quest, where we keep it focused on old stuff.
Yeah, kind of. Like we don't always. We talk about new stuff.
All right. Well, those are the kind of key games. There's probably more, like even like SimCity. and like people like the ActRaiser games. There's so much on Super Nintendo, but look at
it's
the
a
Super
library
Nintendo
of
Classic.
722 games.
Wow.
You know, it's a lot of games. So,
Johnny, what are the super cheap games you should buy? Literally everything we just listed. We're not even going to go over this.
all the key titles, like
What's a cartridge of F-Zero cost? $7?
go get it. Like go buy it complete in box. Go
Get one
buy
of those
your
sealed
Mario
Player's
Kart.
Choice copies.
Whatever you think Mario Kart costs, and like if it's too much money, it isn't. Just go buy it. Same with all the Donkey Kong countries. You know, I got a weird thing. I really don't like monkeys and apes and simians and chimpanzees. Like that whole grouping, I really don't like them. So as a kid, because there was this monkey, and I'm correct in here, it's a monkey that used to be on this wire in a neighbor's house. And it would sometimes get off and chase us. I think I've said that before. But because I hated that monkey so much, I have like this transference. So I never wanted to play any of the Donkey Kong Country games. I never played any of them. Still to this day, I've not played a Donkey Kong Country.
What?
Yeah, like I
thought this was going to end with like, but the Donkey Kong Country games are so good that now it's my favorite trilogy on the SNES.
Nope. Like people asked if I wanted or to trade, and I was big on trading for any games. I won't play DK in any of the Smash Brothers. I just a hard pass. Like any game like Ape Escape and all this stuff, if it's titled like that, I just want nothing to do with it.
I'm back. What are you talking about?
Talking about how
cheap games you should buy. Oh no, we're talking
how
about
I
how
dislike-
Johnny hates monkeys.
primates in general. Like an extreme dislike, so much so that I won't play the Donkey Kong Country games.
So, like, then Andros in Star Fox, who was both a monkey and a mech.
Is
God,
hateable.
that just must be like
Yeah, he's very hateable.
awful.
Yeah, he's super hateable. Happy to shoot him in the face. Yeah. So we were just talking about super cheap games you should buy. You know,
Star Fox.
we already went over all that. So yeah,
Good.
As Tyler says here in our note, in the past 3 years, if you don't know what Super Nintendo games to buy, go buy a Super Nintendo Classic, read the back of the box, and then go buy all of those games. So, All right. So let's get
Updated sequels. That was whoever wrote that. That's a good. That's a smart thing.
Yes, we had a whole conversation about it.
Yeah. So
You're a smart guy.
let's talk about collector stuff, even though all we've been doing is talking about collector stuff. This is into the nitty gritty a little bit. So
Big list of things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Variants, cool corner case stuff, screw variants, things like that. This is what we're getting into. And we talked about this one already. Tyler, tell us about that Super Mario World again. Just a quick one.
I'm just editing out some incorrect Super Mario World information we might have said again. The retail black box Super Mario World is rare and interesting because so many Super Nintendos were bundled with a cartridge of Super Mario World. So again, just to be clear, it came out a little less than a year into the Super Nintendo's lifespan. And then I guess for sake of thoroughness, the Player's Choice one came out in like 1996. And then there are 3 major variants you're going to see, at least that I know of. There's the regular first print black box. There's a black box where the code has a -1 at the end. And you can look at the for sale and use in the USA, Canada, and Mexico text on the back of the box. And the original print has that little red box above it, and that's in line with the UPC. And then on the -1 release, the top of that red box only goes about halfway up the UPC. And then there's a Canadian black box, which has both English and French text in that little kind of aquamarine text on the front of the box that I don't remember what it says. And so I would personally, at this point, just go get those first print black boxes because that's a cool freaking game.
Yep.
Have you heard Super Mario World might be a good game?
Yeah.
I did not know about that -1 variant. Now I have to look at my box.
I believe it is both a manual and a box variant. And a cartridge, maybe. Maybe look into the -1 variant because we kind of make these outlines just based on what we're thinking about.
So yeah, now I have to look at mine, and I'll be out there buying one that isn't a -1 if I can.
And then just one more Mario thing to look out for. Earlier releases of the game had Super Mario World printed on one line on the cartridge, and then the later releases had Super Mario World, I believe Super Mario at the top, and then World printed on a second line. So if you are trying to find a 10 out of 10 Super Mario World card to pair with your black box, you want to get the 10 out of 10 that has the Super Mario World written on one line. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's the last time we screwed up talking about Super Mario World. I'm sorry about all the corrections in this episode, but we were just way off base, just specifically with this retail copy of Super Mario World. We made a lot of incorrect statements in the episode. And hey, I guess as payment for getting all this information wrong and having to make all these corrections, I'll give you one more Super Mario World variant. For the cartridge that has Super Mario on one line and then World on the other, that comes with the original locking cartridge, not the one with kind of the ramp on it. There's a misprint where the seal of quality was printed backwards. And it's not exceptionally rare, but even among the correct label variant and correct cartridge shell variant, it is still pretty uncommon to find these. And there's basically no price difference, so I don't know, go look for them. They're fun.
So I've got one more, like, we're going to get into more variants and stuff too. But one of the big variants that happens too is because during the Super Nintendo's life cycle, it is the ESRB happens. So there was like a grading scale that is then revised by the ESRB system that comes in. So you will see games that have the earlier rating scale on it and then the adapted ESRB scale on it, in the box. So look for those. If you're looking at a game and you see and it's around that time, you can see like on the Zelda Player's Choice, for instance, there's one that is an E for everybody. And then I forget what the other rating was, but the earlier version does not have that E. It has the earlier rating on it. So just be careful of that as well. So that's one of the big
tip, Johnny.
It's a big variant that's around. Through all of Super Nintendo, just games that came out and re-releases. So that's kind of one of the ways to see if you have later prints is, and to see if your parts are married correctly. If your box has, an E on it and your cart doesn't, then you've got the wrong parts together.
I have no idea if this affects Super Nintendo, but I guess it goes up to 1998. Also know that the later ESRB's ratings are solid black, and the earlier ones are the white kind of ones that have the dissolve effect around it. So if you ever see both of them, you want the one that's a white ESRB rating.
All right.
But I don't think that affects Super Nintendo. That's pretty on the edge there.
And maybe Frogger.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe Frogger. So let's talk about one of the biggest things you can find in Super Nintendo collecting.
The biggest, Johnny.
Yeah, whoa, see what I did there? Big box games. Stefan, you love big boxes. You love a big box. Tell us about them.
Well, when you said the biggest thing you could find, the first thing I thought was the exercise bike. So now I'm thinking about the exercise bike.
And we're talking about the exertainment bike with the
biggest
screen
box
button.
around.
So there were some really cool big boxes. And they're all, I will say that they're all, except for is it Lethal Enforcer's the one that's like a slightly different shape? Or maybe
it's big.
Lethal Enforcer's
It's
and
longer.
Super Bomberman?
It's longer,
Yeah.
and it's wider too. So and the Super
Which actually
Bomberman
matters if you're crazy people like us that do box protectors on like everything you possibly can. The Super Game Boy, the Mario Paint, and the Earthbound are all the same size box. And then Super Bomberman, it actually does. They do make a box protector for it, but it is different. And then nobody makes a box protector, to my knowledge, for Lethal Enforcers because it's dirt ass common, even complete, and nobody cares.
But it's so dumb because there's one for the Genesis and there's one for the Sega CD. So these boxes are everywhere. Please just build one. I'll buy 3 of them. You get me for 3. And I did not know that there was a Bomberman one. I'm glad you told me that because I would like one for my Bomberman.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a short run or something. I know I have one, so someone did make one.
Also, the Super Game Boy big box is also the same size as the Earthbound and the Mario Paint. Also, the Mario Paint Player's Choice is also a big box where, some big boxes on later systems, like it just came down to the cart only version, like the smaller box version. But this Player's Choice is a big box.
And that is because the Super Mario Paint, of course, if you don't have one, to know, comes with a hard plastic mouse pad and a mouse. So the Super Game Boy obviously is a cart that allows you to play your Game Boy games on your Super Nintendo, but not your Game Boy Color games. So Yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah, get a Game Boy.
It'll tell you.
Get a Game Boy.
It'll tell you very rudely too.
Yeah, get a Game Boy player and a GameCube, and then get past that. Or if you want to stick to the Super Nintendo, Tyler, tell them what they're supposed to be playing on their Super Nintendo.
Got to be getting a Super Game Boy 2, which was only released in Japan, which is more accurate to the original Game Boy hardware, Johnny. But also, you have to play these on a Super NT, where you can set up the settings so you can have pixel perfect Game Boy at full screen. And it's a huge pain in the ass to set up.
Yeah, there's the Super Game Boy 2 is Japanese only, I believe, and the difference there, as Tyler had mentioned, is the clock speed is slightly different, and there is a link cable access port so that you can trade your Pokemans with your Super Game Boy. For people
so if you have a Game Boy and a Super Game Boy 2, you can trade with yourself, because everyone I know only traded Pokemon with themselves.
Earthbound I covered ad nauseum earlier. Lethal Enforcers, Johnny, is there a gun color variant on Super Nintendo for Lethal Enforcers?
I don't know if it comes with the pink gun or not. That's
I feel like we would see way more pink guns if it did.
Yeah.
We could probably Google this in about 2 seconds.
I feel like I've seen a pink gun for it, but I don't know if that's official or not, if someone just changed the shell. Because the shell would be the same.
You mean a pink gun that's not the Player 2 gun?
Yeah.
That's
what I'm saying is, like, you could buy the Genesis one and swap the shell to on the Super Nintendo, cable. Like, that would be easy. And then suddenly you've got a Super Nintendo pink gun.
Ooh. I like it. I do not own CIB copies of the Carmen Sandiego games. Someone else want to talk about those?
One comes with an almanac and one comes with an encyclopedia.
Cool. What about are the box sizes similar to Genesis and NES or what?
Yeah, they're similar, and they are not the same size, unfortunately. So they're not the same size as the Lethal Enforcers or the Mario Paint. They're not even the same size as each other. They're not the same size as the Xbox. They're basically made special to fit these books, but they are the same size boxes between Super Nintendo and Genesis. So there you go.
Got it. The last one I want to talk about is the Maximum Carnage QVC set. This was an exclusive. We've talked about this before on other podcasts, but it was an exclusive through the QVC shopping network. And I will say, if you buy one sealed, it's basically impossible to tell what it is from the outside. So that's fun. You don't know if you're getting Super Nintendo or Genesis, so that's great. But on top of that, yeah, you could probably weigh them. That's actually good. So, yeah, weigh your sealed QVC games. But finding one sealed is like fucking impossible anyway. So whatever.
I've seen someone who has two, and
shut
you know
up.
who it is.
The other thing I will say is the insert. So the game comes with a hardbound, not trade paperback, but like the collected volume for the Maximum Carnage comic book arc. So we on this particular one, even though that we're like now currently competing with comic book collectors on f***ing everything, this particular one. We've been competing with comic book collectors for a long time because that was the only way that you could get that hardbound Maximum Carnage comic was in this set. It also comes with a set of 3 pins and a non-customized certificate of authenticity that just says the edition size. Does anybody remember what the edition size is?
I don't.
I think it was 3,000, but we don't know if it's 3,000 each or total.
Right. And then, so the to that end, it's also important to know that the box or the piece of cardboard that the insert that the game fits into is also identical for both releases. So if you wanted to, I'm not saying that I do this, but I've said that I do this before anyway, is that if you swapped a Genesis game or the Genesis game for the Super Nintendo game, it would be the identical item. Like, there's no difference.
True.
The Genesis one looks cooler because Maximum Carnage is right side up instead of being sideways and stupid like the SNES one.
Agree.
And there you go. And I was wrong. It was actually 5,000, not 3,000.
I'm just saying for your like set Instagram or your hot Instagram posts, you can take 2 pictures and swap the game and say you have both.
So I want to clarify something on Lethal Enforcers. The Player 2 gun, the way it hooks up is not like through the Player 2 port. It's got like looks like an Ethernet or like old phone cable.
Like a phone cable.
Yeah. So
RJ45.
So technically, that should work with the Super Nintendo as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same thing.
So,
The more you
so-
I don't
know.
even know. I don't know how headlight guns work.
so I think you could just buy the Player 2 gun for Genesis and then go plug it in with your Super Nintendo. So, but if you wanted a pink shell, I'm sure you could swap out the pink shell on
Just
or
destroy
the blue
like
shell.
the desirable gun to make your gun pink.
Yeah, I have 2 of the pink guns, so whatever. Because
Oh.
Some of us have 0 pink
Wow.
guns,
There's a-
Johnny.
well, because there's a variant of the pink gun. There's one that's like a very bubblegumish pink, and then there's one that's more of a salmon.
Oh my god.
Johnny is the Top Hat Stefan voice and the Top Hat Johnny voice the same voice?
No, because
That was pretty Top Hat Johnny.
no,
I think.
it wasn't. That was like nerdy variant Johnny. I was like, no, guys, what I really mean to say is that there is a variant where the colors are slightly adjusted, and in the later print, the dyeing wasn't exactly accurate. So instead of the bright pink in which they intended, we've got a salmon-colored one. There you go.
Thank you. I needed that.
No problem. Happy to oblige.
I think that's all I got. Anybody want to talk about any more big boxes?
We didn't mention that Super Bomberman also has a... So
Oh, yeah.
Super Bomberman has a small box variant, and it's more expensive than the big box variant, or at least equal priced, which is a little bit weird.
Well, no, if we're going to talk about the Super Bomberman, the big box version is called the Party Box. And the reason, or Party Pack, and the reason it's called that is it comes with a hub so you can play 4 players, right? And it's got like the honeybee in there. And so you can plug in multiple, because that's how you play Bomberman with friends. So it's got that. There is a regular small box version, which is the most expensive version. You would think the one that comes with the honeybee in the bigger box, because Super Nintendo, that would be the more expensive. It is not. And then there is another less expensive version of the small box, which is a full art box. It doesn't have the normal Super Nintendo typical iconography on the box, like the typical layout that they have, like where the title and everything goes. It's just like full art Super Bomberman, missing a bunch of the regular Super Nintendo. And that one is also cheaper. And you would think that one should be more expensive too, because it's like a weird variant. Nope. That's another one where they say that was the rental box. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's weird that both of these that should seem like in normal collecting would be more expensive are not. It's just the standard box is the most expensive box for Bomberman. It's very weird to me.
Yeah, and they're all very expensive, like hundreds of dollars for pretty much all of these. Like Super Bomberman Small Box, not a game I usually think about when I think of like, oh, that's an expensive game, but it certainly is.
Yeah, you want to spend $300 on a game, $300 to $400? Go buy a Bomberman Small Box. You want to spend $250? Go buy the Party Pack, which you should do anyways because it's got a useful item in it.
Because you're definitely going to have 5 people over to play Super Bomberman.
Look, that's the retro collectors lie, right? That they tell themselves, I can play these with my friends. I'm not just collecting. It's not just a thing that sits on my shelf. I can play these. Bullshit.
I better get 2 Saturn multi-taps just in case 9 other people come over.
We're gonna play that Bomberman, so gotta get it. It's the best one.
And then everyone comes over and they're just like, let's just find some digital PS4 game to buy so we don't have to hook all that crap up.
Can't you just play Jackbox games on like your Apple TV? Can we just do that? It's so much easier.
I will say that playing the GameCube Mario Kart at Portland via LAN is pretty f***ing cool. Like of the setups that you have to like go out of your way to do, like that was actually pretty neat.
Like we already kind of talked about publisher variants, but there are some more notes that we should put out. We talked about the assembled in Mexico versus assembled in the US. And we kind of talked about Majesco, but Tyler, can you fill us in a little more on that?
So I just wanted to point out with Majesco basically purchased and re-released dead video games, which is not like today where you would take a game that's 5 years old and now it's this retro gem and you can re-release it and double the frame rate and everyone loves you. Majesco bought games like Super Castlevania 4 and Mega Man X and Earthworm Jim 2, like major games, and then they released their crappy, lower quality label, black and white manual, no poster type releases for a whole ton of games, like a lot of Disney games as well. So generally look for the first prints on that kind of stuff. I'll say notably, nobody counts these in their set lists. Everyone has like all these different publisher variants on their stupid Game Boy and NES unlicensed lists. Basically, no one counts these. And another huge reason that this frustrates me kind of is Majesco also has their white label releases, which were these late release kind of budget, we have leftover cartridges, but we don't have labels for them type releases, where they stuck a generic label on the cartridge shell that looks like somebody printed it in their garage. They didn't even spell the full name of the game sometimes. They didn't spell all the words correctly.
They spelled Scooby-Doo wrong.
It spelled Scooby-Doo incorrectly.
And it just says Scooby-Doo. Like, there's no...
It's also WF WrestleMania instead of WWF WrestleMania, and there are dozens of these, and I don't think we even have a full list of every single game that was released in this white label format. But if you're a person who thinks that publisher variants count as part of the set, I guarantee you don't have these stupid white label Majesco releases as part of your set. You have Majesco Mega Man X and a stupid white label version as part of your set? I don't think so.
Yeah, that I've only seen like one of ever.
Yeah, and if you're like looking for a specific one that's not like Contra 3, which is one of the more common ones, like good luck with these.
Something also to note, so going back to how these were distributed, basically when Majesco decided, like, okay, well, the Super Nintendo is aging out, we kind of went out of this game. They basically started dumping, rather than spending the money to put boxes and manuals together, they dumped all these cartridges into like the wholesaler market, right? So they were like selling off a glut of these games, and that's why they didn't bother to print labels for them either. They just like basically sold them to the lowest bidder. And so the other thing that I wanted to point out is that sealed for these Majesco white label games is actually a poly bag. So it's just a taped poly bag, and that's how they all came. So if you're looking for a quote-unquote sealed copy of this, and honestly, the only one that I've ever seen sealed is the Contra one. Some guy had them on eBay for a while. He had a ton of them that were sealed, and that's where I got mine. But yeah, they just came sealed, tape sealed, like Scotch tape sealed, in a plastic bag.
Yeah, those Contra 3s were just one of these items, like basically everything Deal Tavern has is one of those things that you see for so long, you're just like, if I really want that stupid thing, I could buy it. And then one day I bought it and it disappeared, and now it's like, oh, I can't get that anymore. And I think that's kind of cool. So whenever I see cool stuff like that, I'm just buying it immediately now.
Yeah, even so, to that point, I think anytime you see somebody, if there's like a glut of something on the market, but it is coming from one source, you have to understand that like when that source does eventually run out, there may not be another source. So like the dude that has like a gajillion like sealed Aladdin deck enhancers,
yeah,
like that's someday that's going to dry up, right? And then all of a sudden, no one's going to be able to get sealed deck enhancers, even though they've been like crazy common for years.
True.
All right, what other publisher variants do we have? I just wanted to point out JVC and THQ Super Star Wars. JVC put out the first releases of the Super Star Wars games, and THQ put out the re-releases of Super Star Wars games. So if your Super Star Wars says THQ on it, it is garbage.
It is garbage.
Yeah, trash.
Literally didn't know that until Johnny told me that like a year or two ago.
And how quickly did you replace yours?
I don't think I replaced them all yet. I don't think I have Empire. I don't care about the Super Star Wars games. I have a Return of the Jedi and I have the Super Star Wars.
Well, Stefan, I know you talked a bunch about the big boxes, but you did not get to talk about Illusion of Gaia. So I'll let you talk about this one.
So yeah, the Illusion of Gaia had a promotional that, while supplies last kind of deal, where it came in a clamshell, which is basically like, you know that packaging that you like always hate to open, that you have to like cut open with scissors, the like plastic clamshell packaging, basically came in something similar to that. So the game, it's the same box, but it's a sealed copy of Illusion of Gaia, and then right above it, it has a folded Illusion of Gaia T-shirt, and it's my favorite T-shirt. Actually, I own 4 of them because I wear them, and they are all slowly degrading. But and every time I have to buy a new one, it's more expensive, which is great. But yeah, so and then just in case you weren't sure whether or not there was a T-shirt in your clear packaging with a giant T-shirt in it, there's a sticker on it that says "comes with a free T-shirt." So just to sell it. So yeah, that's the Illusion of Gaia T-shirt pack. The T-shirt's so good, so good.
Cool. Where did Johnny leave us?
Maybe.
Oh, Johnny did leave us. Oh, this is one of those moments.
Oh God! What are you talking about?
Oh, all right, we were talking about zombies that are neighbors. These aren't really variants. I don't even know why I put this here. We were just like listing a whole bunch of cool things on the Super Nintendo. There's a series of medical games. So Captain Novolin is that a diabetes game? I don't remember.
Yes.
Yes.
And then Rex Ronin is a game where you shrink down and go in to fight diseases. I don't remember if that has a specific thing. Packy and Marlin, I believe, has the subtitle "Learn About Diabetes with Two Wacky Pals" or something like that.
Diabetes. Yeah.
And then Bronchi the Bronchiosaurus is an asthma game where you learn about asthma. And all of these are fairly rare, but they're also the type of games where they're pretty easy to find sealed because there's just leftover stock because it's all this weird garbage. And it's just this very interesting series of games.
I tried to play through Bronchi once, and it was just not a thing I ever want to do again.
Oh, no. You might want to play through Packy and Marlin. And this is in the variant section because of the Captain Novolin variant that Johnny knows about.
There's a sleeve, right? So there was like you could get this at like your doctor's office. There was like you could theoretically check it out. So it had this sleeve that you could like kind of library style check out, sign, and then go. For a long time, this was super hard to find in the sleeve, and then it became pretty common to find it. Like it was like at one point like a $500 game, and that like if you found it with the sleeve, and then it was everywhere for a while, and it was like $200. But now I think it's hard to find again. So that's
I haven't seen any. No, I'm not saying that they haven't graded any, but I haven't seen any graded copies with the sleeve unless they're not putting. Unless they don't fit.
I should.
Like that might be
it should fit because it's a standard Super Nintendo. It's just a little bit wider because of that, but there should be room in the WATA games.
Because I've seen some Novolins graded recently, but they didn't have the slipcover.
Man, I should send.
Oh, it's like a VHS cover. It looks exactly like all right. What? That's so stupid.
It's so boring.
It makes your game look worse.
Yeah, this is like I have it up on my top shelf, and you can't see it. You can only see like the white sleeve kind of around it, and then because you can only read Captain Novolin if the spine is faced out. Yeah, it's a real dumb one. So that's those. We got NFRs to talk about, some games that kind of stick out in this system. These aren't variants, but
I mean they're label variants.
No, I mean not really. They're just like box style variants, but NFRs stick out. So like the label itself, I mean it has a thing over it. So let's talk about that. I'm not saying it's not a variant. It's just there's nothing that exciting about them.
So there's 14 not for resale, official, like actually printed as part of the label, not for resale games for the Super Nintendo that were for the SNES kiosk mainly. And so the 14 in particular actually have badges printed as part of, it's not a sticker on top. It's actually printed into the label that say not for resale. The Donkey Kong competition cartridge also says not for resale on it. But we don't count that because it's its own thing. But yeah, so these were games that were meant for the Super Nintendo kiosks. Now, Nintendo also did sticker not for resale games, but that was for various things, either for kiosks or like members of Team Nintendo, which were like the people who would go around and advocate for Nintendo to like retailers, like, oh, you should carry our product, and here it is. So they would sticker the games with not for resale stickers typically on the back, which is why you have to be a little bit careful with not for resale stickers, because someone could conceivably back swap, the back of a Hagane or something, and now you have a not for resale Hagane, and that, I don't know if that commands a premium or not, or if it would. And then the other way that not for resale stickers also get put on is anytime Nintendo sold a game to an internal employee, if it was a loose copy, they would put a not for resale sticker on it, just to signify that it had been sold internally. So that's sort of the three ways that you would get a not for retail sticker. Most of the time, people don't consider not for resale stickered cartridges as part of the not for resale set. I've seen people make arguments for it, but again, with like the notion of being able to back swap, that's a hard sell for me personally, and a hard sell for most of the people that I've talked to who are really into NFRs. But yeah, there are a grand total of 14 of the actual printed into the label not for resale games.
And all of those, their end label also has big red text that says "not for resale" instead of the title of the game, right? Yeah, so.
Right, and it's stark white, and it says "not for resale" in red.
So you'll basically never find them just happenstance looking through a store, because they stick out like an absolute sore thumb.
Yeah. Now, stickered not for resale stuff, I've found it in stores and stuff too, but
okay. Yep, and I don't know, how expensive are these? So I actually looked at a couple of these not that long ago, and like Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run, like a licensed athletic game with like a pretty popular dude, I saw it going for $35 and no one was buying it. But I imagine some of the more popular stuff is more expensive.
They do vary wildly, and the rarity is different. Like off the top of my head, the Mortal Kombat 2 NFR game is significantly more rare and more expensive. I honestly can't speak to price off the top of my head because I bought them a long time ago.
Oh, you've got them all right. You're so smart, Stefan. I think I saw Mortal Kombat 2 selling in the range of 500 pretty recently.
Yeah.
All right. Colored boxes, Johnny. Are we talking about colored boxes?
We are,
like
but
part of the trivia show.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about colored boxes, but also something about Canadian variants too, which I don't think we touch on enough. So a lot of the Canadian manuals will have a white corner, like it'll just be like the back corner of the manual. Where the spine, the upper corner, if you're looking at it on the left hand, upper left, it's just like a stripe and it's cut white. That's the manual. Aside from like the French text on it, you'll see that. That usually indicates a different language. But also those French Canadian boxes will also have a white tab. So if you open up the box, there's an actual white tab. So if you're unsure if you're getting a Canadian game, that the way to tell is one, looking at the manual and the cart carefully. Like the front of the box, like you can't tell sometimes, or like there won't be enough French text on there, especially like the ESRB is usually the first place to look. But if that's not there, check for that tab, check to see any French language, and then especially check the backs. Also, the back of the manuals usually also have a big red stripe. So that's a way to check to see if you have a French Canadian game in your collection.
So you could throw it out.
Yep. So you could trash it. So because they're not as good. Yeah. Who cares? Gross.
Just to go back to it real quick, Game Value Now actually does track some of the NFRs. NFRs is one of those topics where they track some and not others, but they are tracking Mortal Kombat 2, and the average price right now is $577.
Look at me being pretty close to accurate.
You did it, Tyler. So colored boxes, the only reason I'm bringing this up, because the Super Nintendo is one of the most uniform, boring things to look at. It's less boring than the PlayStation 1, but it's not that exciting because it's not very colorful. Like if you look at the PAL stuff, it is so colorful and like weird, and like the Mario box is like this bright yellow, like Super Mario World. It's awesome. The Kirby box is like this bright pink. It looks so cool. But for me, who has got a little OCD and likes uniformity, you just get this black wall if you're collecting US Super Nintendo, except for like two dumb games. You've got Riddick Bowe, which has like a white end for some reason, and Final Fight Game, which is orange. The rest
is
of
it
them
always orange?
it isn't always orange. Because there's one rare instance, again, speaking of Canada, where they, like, in a warehouse, there's this, like, I'm not sure how many copies were even found, but I know of at least one.
I thought it was one.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it's more than that. I know that there is one. So it's a black box Final Fight guy, again. And it's like this weird absurdity. Like they said, this was the one that was going to be the retail release, or maybe it wasn't going to be in Blockbusters in Canada. Maybe it wasn't going to be a rental exclusive in like Quebec or something, but they changed their mind or whatever. So this one version of it's been found. It is the most absurd. There's not even a price because it was for sale on eBay for a long time. And I think it was for sale for $100,000 or something like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 10 years ago even. And I don't know if it ever sold or like it was just an intention grab. But that's like one strange variant. The other like weird box in the Super Nintendo set, besides like the big box, is RoboCop versus Terminator, which comes in this terrible, terrible plastic box.
It looks so cool until I got my hands on one and realized it's such a piece of garbage.
Yeah, because the whole thing is not plastic. It's a plastic front shell and then a
cardboard tray.
It's yeah, and I haven't seen one sealed, so I don't know if they like really actually crammed a manual into there or like fold it in half or whatever. But there's no way in hell that a standard size manual fits in that plastic box either. So maybe they shrink wrapped it to the outside. I don't know. If somebody actually has a factory sealed RoboCop versus Terminator, I would be interested in seeing it.
Yeah,
so
go ahead and open it and tell us. Oh yeah, I didn't even notice. So I've never noticed. I just happen to have the game right next to me. Yeah, the manual is totally just straight up folded in half and crammed in here. Huh.
Yeah. I just don't know if that's something that they did in the factory or not. Like, or if it's just like as soon as everyone opened it, they just were like, well, I guess there's no other option.
Oh, man.
And just like folded it in half and stuck it in there.
Interesting note.
I don't know the answer.
And then there's also Pac-Man 2 has a lenticular cover apparently, which I just learned today. Yep. I already knew about the Genesis version, but apparently the first prints on SNES or every version on SNES has a lenticular cover.
Nope, not every. There's, in fact, I think another variant of it too. But yeah, there's the standard version, the lenticular, and then I think there's like a Majesco copy.
Okay, and that seems like a candidate for a Majesco, like 100%.
Is there a copy of, because Claymates had a lenticular cover? Has anybody seen a non-lenticular cover of that?
People have, but it's just because the lenticular cover fell off.
But it's black underneath, because I know, because the one that happened, the one that I got from you.
Oh yeah. I mean, it happens to all of them. It's literally just put on with rubber cement. So anytime you want to fix it. I
was just curious if there was enough.
Yeah, I don't.
Whoa,
I don't
are you
know
talking about restoration, Johnny? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, man, just do it for that
Playmates.
Also, on your black box NES games, go ahead and take that Sharpie and color in.
Yeah, any white stuff.
Cracks, yeah, just do it.
Did we talk about how I saw a video on Reddit where someone was like condoning that, like an actual thing you should do, like not as a joke? He's like, this is how you restore your boxes. And he was doing like some stuff where he was like pressing it or ironing it or something. It's like, all right. And then he started coloring in it all black and made it look like a total piece of garbage.
Nice.
That is a terrible idea.
Reddit's a great place.
Yep. For collectors
don't listen to
to
anything
go.
on Reddit. Don't listen to anything on Facebook. They're all lies and no one actually knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Listen to the Collector's Quest
us.
podcast where we are right 100% of the time.
Yes, and there's absolutely no other podcast talking about game collecting right now. It's just us.
Yes.
Don't try to fact check that at all.
There's no video game collectors podcast besides the Collector's Quest podcast.
There might be one. Maybe.
Should we fill our audience in on that joke? Because I enjoyed that joke.
Sure, go ahead, tell them.
A lot of people have a podcast. It's called the Video Games Collectors Podcast. It's hard to find because it's a terrible name, but it's on YouTube and has like 45 views. So I don't know.
Did you guys listen to it? Because I have not listened to it yet.
I have listened to it, and there's piece in particular that is my absolute favorite thing, and I will like text Dennis about it till the end of time, because there's a part where he's talking about how, like, basically brand saturation of Nintendo and Mario, and he goes, anybody can sing you the jingle, and then he or anyone can hum the intro, and then he tries and fucking fails, and it's just a magical moment because he goes, anyone can hum you the jingle, doot, whatever.
Oh my God.
I died. It is the best thing ever. Sorry.
Yeah, I only listened to like half of it so far. So far it seems very introductory and the type of stuff you would get from Dennis if you had a conversation with him, and he talked about the aspects of games that make it collectible and exciting and how things are going to change in the future. But I like keeping tabs on this stuff, so I will also listen to that podcast. Also, there aren't any podcasts about video game collecting, so it's nice that there is one more.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what other like subsequent episodes are like, because as you mentioned, it was very top level and introductory. They talked about themselves and their history a lot, but basically all of the. It's funny you say that should you have a conversation with Dennis, this is what he would talk about. When he had a conversation with us on this podcast.
Oh, exactly.
He went over those exact same topics. So that's why I'm just, it'll be interesting to see what he talks about once he gets away from the like single podcast content stuff.
So he talked about 3 aspects when he was on our show, and then on his podcast, now he has 4 aspects. He's added an aspect, and he was sad that he couldn't make them all one letter, and I think he made them all R's now, and in like a super shitty, doesn't make sense way. But he's like relevance in this way. But you got those 4 R's. Way to go, Dennis. You don't listen to the show. Anyway, we were talking about Super Nintendo. God, I wanted to talk about the home improvement manual. It just opens up and it says real men don't need manuals, and there's no actual manual, and that's very funny. Want to bring that up. And then the last thing, Stefan, your stupid barcode carts. Did you bring that up? That's different from the not for resales.
That's the actual name here, or the actual note here is Stefan's stupid barcode carts. Actually, I did a video on these. If you go on video on my YouTube, Archon 1981, and look at the library carts video, I'll teach you all about them. But essentially, Nintendo for many, many years kept a internal physical library of every licensed game, and that was used for not only like gameplay counselors, but also like anytime a movie studio needed assets or like the Team Nintendo people needed a game or something, then they would just check it out of this library. And these library carts have a very specific barcode on them, so they're pretty easily identifiable if you know what you're looking for. So I do suggest you go take a look at that video so that if you find one in the wild that it's a barcode that you should keep versus a barcode that you shouldn't keep. And I would stress that to people in like the Washington area. Like Pink Gorilla Games, I've chastised them before for removing those barcodes, but I love them. And so obviously where Nintendo is, you're going to find the most of them in the wild. But I did want to bring that up as just kind of things to watch out for, because I know there are a lot of people, especially the new blood, who wants their games as pristine as possible, and they want to take off every fucking sticker they can. And so this particular barcode sticker it just signifies that it's something special, that it lived in the walls of Nintendo and it was used for official Nintendo stuffs. So maybe you don't want to remove that barcode, and if you do, I'm mad at you. Just
to describe it from memory, I think it's a relatively long barcode, about 1 centimeter in width, and has a kind of rounded bottom.
Yep, and there's a like an alphanumeric serial number associated with it as well.
So don't remove those barcodes. All right, this episode is getting long because we're the Collector's Quest podcast. Were there special editions on the SNES?
No,
I don't think so. Maybe the QVC Maximum Carnage.
Yeah.
What's going on in the aftermarket with homebrew? Not much, because SNES is a lot harder to develop for than NES. And despite that, just the fact that there's so much more power and so much more you have to do with graphics to make a nice looking SNES game compared to an NES game, a lot more popular to make homebrew for older systems, I'll say. The big ones, 8-Bit Xmas, there were 2 of them, I believe, in, oh my god,
2012 and 13, I think.
12. I know 12 is one of them. Yeah, I'm gonna say 12 and 13. I can't even remember what the style of games are because people literally only get them to complete their 8-bit Xmas set. They're probably a couple $100 each, but I don't think they're crazy. Fork Parker's Crunch Out was a game made by Devolver Digital. It's bad. I have a review on my YouTube channel. Sydney Hunter is one of those homebrew games that's been ported to like every old platform ever, and SNES was just one stop on its homebrew journey.
No, that was the original one. That was when they were first developing it. That was
a ColecoVision game, was it not?
Well, when they were first porting this out, like the first place it was to Super Nintendo, and then through Kickstarter and other like achievements, it made it to other systems. But initially, it was just Super Nintendo.
Oh, okay.
And there was a gold cart and a blue cart, and then wrong carts went out to backers. It was kind of a nightmare. And it took forever and ever and ever and ever as every Kickstarter.
You want to speak about forever? When was Sydney Hunter? All right, so let's talk about Sydney Hunter. It's a 2D platforming game. It's sort of like it's an 8-bit action adventure game. How long ago did this game come out? I've been waiting for the NES version of this game for a decade.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still the Super Nintendo one came out like 2 years ago.
Oh my god.
So,
and then I guess the only other thing that really matters is Pico Interactive. They licensed and re-released some stuff like Super Noah's Ark 3D and potentially some other stuff. They've been
and like Humans that was released in PAL but never came over here. Now is got a proper release.
Guys, what was that hot garbage fighting game?
I was just about to think of that. I can't remember what that hot garbage fighting game was.
Something Knights, something
Unholy Knight.
Unholy Knight.
Yeah, that game sucks. Apparently made by SNK developers who forgot how to make video games and was just a complete pile of garbage. My cartridge crashes because it's just like not a finished game.
But what I think kind of stood out for me for that release was that it was like mass market sold on Amazon. That piqued my interest.
Same with weird. And Double Dragon 5 or whatever.
Return of Double Dragon was made by Retroism. Which is just a translation of the Super Famicom Super Double Dragon. I don't remember exactly what game that is because I don't care about Double Dragon. And then there's multi-carts. What is it? It's so late. It's like 3 a.m., guys. The cavemen people. What are they?
Joe and Mac.
And then there's the Joe and Mac collection with the special edition emulator console it comes with. You know that's going to be rare. We've definitely never joked about that before, Johnny.
Definitely got a special blue shell. Got to go get that one with the ice blue shell. Only comes with the console pack in. There's also the Brawlers pack, and God, what's the other one that they did? I forget.
So a key takeaway here, you notice how Tyler isn't excited about any of these, and Tyler loves aftermarket stuff. That's because the SNES aftermarket games pretty much all suck. So
also, it's 3 a.m.
That's true.
The Joe and Mac collection is like a good collection. You get Joe and Mac 1 and 2, and then you get Congo's Capers. And if you look at the numbering system for Joe and Mac, you'll just like lose your mind. And it's not named the same in PAL as it is here. It's ridiculous. Because Congo's Caper apparently is a Joe and Mac game. The more you know.
Great.
There you go.
Johnny, do you want to talk about any of these accessories?
No. All the accessories
there's a super
are pretty
scope.
basic.
It's a light gun. There's a mouse. There's this super batter up is a baseball bat that is relatively easy to find sealed. At least when I was looking for them. The X-Band, I know you want to talk about it, Stefan. What's the X-Band?
Yeah, the X-Band was it was a early online matchmaking system. It was an actual piece of hardware. It was a modem that plugged into your game or into your console, and very much like the Super Noah's Ark 3D, you put the cartridge in that you want to play in the top. There was a very short list. Mortal Kombat 2 comes to mind. I'm sure one of the Street Fighters, a couple of sports games.
Weapon Lord was specifically developed for it, I believe.
Yeah, it's true. Weapon Lord was. The thing that I think is most interesting about this is and also I think was it the Saturn modem? There was another in the next generation in the 32-bit generation, one of the modem architectures for I'm pretty sure it was either Saturn or Dreamcast, but basically X-Band made the modem for another console as well. The thing that I think is most interesting about the X-Band is that there's actually development being done against it today. So there's people that are trying to take the architecture and adapt it to broadband and do like basically like a private server kind of thing to get the X-band working. Because at the time it was a subscription service. Not only was it a subscription service, but you know, you had to buy the modem, then a subscription, and then also like whatever like long distance fee that you had to because they had like a set amount of like phone numbers that you could dial into to access X-band, and if there wasn't one close to you, then you were hosed and you were paying long distance fees. So the X-band, I think, is kind of an interesting footnote. The only other accessory I wanted to talk about, and it's not on this list, is I referenced it earlier, but the exercise bikes, that the Exertainment exercise bikes. And the only reason why I really think those are important is when you are looking for them, when you find them, sometimes, so like these exercise bikes had the gym quality one had an SNES in it, and it had a monitor on board. And so a lot of times if you find the large uprights, the bikes, they will have the mountain bike speed racer or speed racer, mountain bike, whatever, the expensive one will be in that Super
mountain bike.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's too late.
Yeah.
I can't even.
It will be in that Super Nintendo. So just know that even if you don't want the bike, sometimes you can find a $2,000 cartridge in it. So, or however much.
I want Peloton to make an app and have an accessory where I can plug in, just like a download basically, and like play with a controller that I can finally play Exertainment games.
Well, that's like they did a Virtual Boy emulator for the Oculus, and that's fucking awesome.
Yeah. So like, come on, Peloton, NordicTrack, let's get on it. Okay.
But yeah, the two versions of that bike, there's a home version and a gym quality version. So
I did not know that.
Yep.
Do you know what? So something that sticks out to me about SNES is that the set is there's some stuff on the edges of the set, but a lot of the stuff that is off the beaten path, like the competition carts, especially like Campus Challenge or this stupid ass exercise bike, it's so rare or so big or so ridiculous that like even a person who usually goes above and beyond just like would not care about any of that garbage.
I don't care, and I have like everything, and I'm like, I had a chance to buy the exercise bike twice, and I've passed out on it.
Yeah, I passed a bunch of times too, just because it's just the footprint is just so big.
Like with NES, it's like you can go like NES, you can go like I'm an NES +1 collector, I'm an NES +2 collector. With SNES, it's like I'm SNES +1, or I'm SNES +5,469. I'm going for everything. And speaking of, the one last thing I wanted to bring up, there's a Brazilian SNES Gold controller, which I'm literally only bringing up because I know Super Nintendo has one, so we have to hype up how cool it is. Included in the 1998 World Cup edition of the Brazilian Super NES, and it came with International Superstar Soccer Deluxe as a pack-in. This was a contest prize, though. That's my next sentence here. Given away as a prize for the Blockbuster Championships, perhaps the Blockbuster World Championships held in 1995. And all of that was just copy-pasted directly from SNES Central. But this is basically a regular-ass Super Nintendo controller that has been spray-painted gold, maybe? It is not a durable coating. If you use it, it will wear off. And I guess notably, there is one on eBay with two other regular SNES controllers listed for $64,000.
Wow, those are some really expensive regular controllers.
Those regular controllers help bring that cost down. That's just efficient.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So yeah, look out for really shitty looking gold SNES controllers, especially if you live in Brazil, I guess.
Yep. All right. Uncommon games that aren't yet expensive. Super Nintendo, most of the uncommon stuff is that big middle ground, and it's all kind of expensive, relatively expensive anyways. But you might find like some of the Majesco white label stuff, and Super Mario World, even though like I've been looking at sales, the nice copies are even getting up to $500 and $600. So I think it's officially hit expensive, but it like you can still find it. It used to be just like $100, $200 complete box, but yeah, the black box one is going up. So
I think if we had a $10,000 game draft instead of a $1,000 game draft, I think like a nice copy of Super Mario World is still a game I would want in my collection.
Me too.
I feel like we'd have to do a $10,000 one if we did it now.
I know the whole point. The whole point of why I wanted to do a game draft was kind of to prove that you didn't have to have an astronomical budget to have a cool collection of video games.
Well,
I like keeping it to 1,000.
Tyler and I talked about doing a revisit of it and just like looking at what the cost of our draft would be now, like re-examining the games we all picked and then like tallying it up now.
So you wanted to do that because you know I would lose horribly because I wasn't collecting for future purposes. I was collecting to have all my favorite cartridges.
I think it would be fun to illustrate how bad you lost, but yeah. But I also think it would be interesting to see like what we took $1,000 and then like, oh God, you can't actually do that. I think it's an interesting way to put perspective on what is exactly has happened in the market.
Yeah,
so
let's do
anyway,
a game draft. Let's do it.
Yep. So things to watch out for, guys. This is like repros and like the PAL Stadium events, which you could potentially mix up. We talked about some of these already. For display only boxes, like they are just regular Super Nintendo, same box shape and everything, but it does have a red band. Also, there are repros of those boxes too, so be careful.
Are you
on
serious?
both. Yeah, there are, which is like the dumbest shit ever. But most of them are new. Like usually I see it on the Earthbound box, which is the repro, but you can find these. They're not too expensive. They're like $20 to $30. So if you want to like collect that set, but sometimes people will try and sell you a CIB, but it's in that not for resale box. Or for display only box. So be careful. Super
Johnny,
Noah's.
I want to give a tangential tip here that I just learned that no one else is going to care about. For the Atari Jaguar, there are readily available brand new boxes and manuals that you can get from Atari distributors, but they don't have this. There's a holographic sticker on them specifically for Rayman, which is like a $300 game or something. So you can't just buy a cartridge and put it in that box. You need to get your Atari Jaguar games actually complete in box.
Cool.
That's my Atari public service.
On the Super Nintendo episode, glad we brought up Jaguar. The set. It's a nice contrast, really. The system everyone loves versus the system literally no one cares about.
Nobody cares.
Not even
I think I'm going to get an Atari Jaguar, is what I'm trying to say.
No. I have one Atari Jaguar game, and it's the sealed copy of White Man Can't Jump.
I have a couple Atari Jaguar games. I have an Atari Jaguar and the Atari Jaguar CD, both in box. If you need some Atari Jaguar stuff, hit me up. Hit me up. Happy to move them. All right. Other things to look out for. Inner trays of CIB games are, largely reproduced. You can tell that they are because the original ones wrap all the way around. There's, it's just a rectangle with an inlay to put your game.
And that's true for all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reproductions are, it's like a bigger top end and then a cutout that the cart will fit in, but it doesn't like wrap around like where the board would be. So it's very easy to tell them apart. So I don't know.
So are you saying that all the trays that have kind of four sides to them, those are all originals and the repros are just the three-sided ones?
Pretty sure. I mean, unless that was,
that is not true. I'm almost positive.
I don't ever remember opening a Super Nintendo game and seeing a three-sided tray. Now we have to look into it because I
don't know enough about trays, but I know enough to know that I don't know enough, and this is a part of collecting SNES that stresses me out.
Sounds like this is going to be an editor's note.
Yep.
No, like I don't know enough. Like I thought there were games that did come in a three-sided.
Maybe late ones. Like there's lots of weird revision. Like that Frogger has one where it's got like a built-in tray into it. There's a version that doesn't, and there's a version that does. So maybe like late releases, but I know like pretty much all the early releases. I mean, as a kid, I only had X amount of games. So, and then when I started collecting, all of them came with those kind of trays. So it could be that maybe there were three-sided trays, or by the time I started noticing that there was just too many repros for me to suss out the difference.
That may be entirely true. Like
that's what I'm entirely worried about now. Like
if you've only seen them as an adult collector, then it's entirely possible that unless you opened a sealed game that had three sides, then yeah.
I mean, and I've been collecting Super Nintendo like as of 2004. So when I started collecting, I didn't see those because I had lots of boxes without trays. And then when I started to find trays, it was all reproductions, even earlier reproduction trays. Anyways, there's lots of repros for Black Box Super Mario World, so be careful of that. Back swaps is a big deal on Super Nintendo. People try to clean them up, and the easiest way to usually tell a back swap is that the colors don't line up exactly right. So
I don't know about that.
Uneven
there are
fading.
cartridges that yellow differently for the front and back.
Yeah, I would disagree with that as well.
That's not what I said.
But
listen, let me finish my point. The cut like the grays. I'm not talking about the yellowing. I'm talking about the grays like from the factories. Like when you see people do a bad job, your quickest tip is to look to see if those grays line up, because if it is from the same factory and it has not been swapped, it will be the same gray. I'm not talking about the yellowing. Yellowing is a thing we're going to talk about at the very end, which happens to Super Nintendo and to be examined. Go ahead and interject anything else.
Yep. So I think that the easiest way to tell is if you can find a so there's a factory code stamped into the back, physically stamped into the back of every SNES game, and so it's like just a number, either a 1 or 2 digit number, and that corresponds to the actual factory that it was produced at. So I mean, if somebody swaps a back for another one of the same game, or at least from another one of the same factory, like that's much less of a big deal than if someone mismatched the factory or mismatched the label text, because it does change a couple times. So yeah, just find a copy, like look on the internet or ask people on a forum that you trust what the factory code should be on the back, and just make sure that yours has the same factory code, and that's generally going to be okay.
And I would bet that SNES Central has a list of those codes.
Probably. They've got everything. If you're collecting Super Nintendo, you should be there. So, especially if you're going hard at it. Other things to look at is the re-release of Super Noah's Ark by Pico. It comes in a normal cartridge versus that like weird thing we were talking about, which needed a cartridge on top of it. Okay. And like we might as well get to the notes since we talked about it. Super Nintendo's cartridges and the systems do yellow. There are ways and stuff to clean those. I don't know if that's bad for the system. I'm not advocating one way or another for that, but it is a system that is highly prone to yellowing. And they will yellow in different patterns, like sometimes just the first, like the inner portion of the Super Nintendo, sometimes the whole thing, sometimes only the top, sometimes just the bottom. The yellowing patterns are very weird. And as Stefan was alluding to, sometimes the front will yellow, sometimes the back will yellow on a cart, and sometimes the whole thing will just yellow. Not a good indicator.
Yellowing is not caused by, but it is also accelerated by sunlight. So sometimes it's just a weird pattern in that the Super Nintendo was sitting in the window shop the window of a shop for a long time in a specific position, and you'll get some weird, casting pattern on it.
Yep, and you can look up Retro Bright, which is a hydrogen peroxide-based solution which people use to reverse the yellowing. But it doesn't last forever, and I've heard it can make the plastic more brittle, but I don't like repeating things without knowing 100%. I know it can reverse, but I'm not sure if it makes the plastic more brittle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It does. That's why I'm not advocating one way or the other, because I don't know. Like anytime you take something out of a plastic, you're removing something, you're breaking something down. So it's not cleaning, because it's not just like cleaning the yellow off of it. You are fundamentally taking something out of the plastic. You're causing either a chemical change or a removal. So I'm wary of that. But again, because I don't know enough, I'm not going to advocate for or against.
Just throw out your yellow SNESs.
Yeah.
Just forget. There's enough of them out there that aren't yellowed for whatever reason. So bromine something, some of them don't have them, I guess.
Or right? Just find 2 and then cobble them together.
Yeah.
Get it.
Or don't worry about it. How about that?
Yeah, or that. So
no, it looks dirty, even though I know it's not, and I don't like it, Stefan.
Guys, what is the current outlook for this system? Tell me, how do we play it?
It's like the easiest and most effortless thing in literally the entire planet Earth, besides maybe the NES. You got the Super NT for enthusiasts, which is the FPGA fancy recreation by Analog, which since coronavirus has been selling, by the way, for ridiculous prices on eBay. So if you have one and need like an extra $400 or $500, you might want to sell it. There's the SNES Classic for people who aren't crazy, which is only like $80, and that's Nintendo's official emulator, and they've even just started selling those refurbished. And I don't know how those come, but if you're one of those people who's a collector of those Nintendo refurbished products, I think they're $60. So maybe pick that up.
I will. I actually bought a couple. I bought one of each, so I will let you guys know how that turns out.
All right. Yeah. And then Messen S, I believe, is the accurate emulator that people like to use. There's some older ones, but I know Messen is really, really highly regarded for NES. So I assume their SNES one is also great.
Okay.
And then it's in the eShop, and you can buy it on Virtual Console and get it when you subscribe to Nintendo Switch Online. And these games are freaking everywhere. How they're bleeding out of my eyeballs. I'm surprised they're not on Steam.
Super easy to play Super Nintendo games. Very legally and cheaply if you are looking for them. And, you like a couple of the corner case games, your Metal Warriors and stuff that you got to get. Again, products like the NT exist if you want to play them on a modern TV, or go get yourself, a PVM or a CRT you found on someone's front yard.
There's also the pretty big leaps forward recently in like cables for like component cables and such. They are not all, however, the same quality. There is varying degrees of quality that produce varying degrees of lag. The Rad2X HDMI cable is very good, and RetroTink also makes a component cable. So I would just go over to head over. We name dropped it earlier in the show, but RetroRGB. If you go over their site, they will in the various consoles they'll show you what cables are the best to buy. And Bob from RetroRPG does like crazy in-depth breakdowns on things like lag. So I would trust his recommendation on cables.
Okay. Quickly, before we go, guys, and I don't know if because I had to step away for a moment, but did you guys talk about Super Mario All-Star versus Super Mario All-Star with Super Mario World?
Nope.
Okay.
Does it count?
It counts. Okay. First off, there's two versions of Super Mario All-Stars. There's one that includes Super Mario World, one that doesn't. The one that includes Super Mario World does not have a box. It was a pack-in. So any box you find for it will be a repro. There is a box. There has a separate manual from the other Super Mario All-Stars. It's all different. So if you have Super Mario All-Stars, make sure you have the right manual. And it won't say Super Mario World, and it'll have Mario with like the top hat and the little rabbit ears. So it's pretty easy to tell. If you've got Super Mario All-Stars with Super Mario World, which is awesome to have because what a compilation of games right there. You get, it says on the manual looks just like the label, but there is no box. There are lots of reproduction boxes for it out there. You can pick one up. I have one in my set just because I wanted all the games in the set to have a box. So same way I did Mario Duck Hunt and games like that. This is one I bought a fake box for just so it could live with all the other games in the set.
All right, Johnny, I'm just going to go ahead and disagree. The console box is the box for Mario All-Stars plus World. Just like Super Mario Duck Hunt's box is an NES action set.
Okay, cool. But you're not going to fit that next to all the games if you have all your games on the shelf and you want to just go.
That's the box. I don't fit Miracle Piano on my shelf. It's just the way it is.
Okay, well, I took mine out and bought a repro box.
Well, you can't go around telling people there's no box. It's not like it came in just like a bag.
Shut up.
Because there are SNES games that came in bags, the Majesco White Label games.
Shut up. They know what I mean. There is no
dragging out this podcast is already like the longest podcast.
I'm dragging it out.
I said Tyler. I was talking to myself as you. People are going to see like, oh my God, a 3-hour SNES podcast. And they're like, this is what we're getting?
Yeah.
There's some good info.
Thanks for the commentary on Jaguar. That could have saved us 5 minutes.
Yeah, God, Tyler.
All right, guys, I suggest that we don't do what are we buying, what are we playing.
No, we got to just get through it real quick.
You got to do it? Okay.
Because otherwise I'm going to have a bunch of stuff loaded up on the next episode.
Okay. guys, let's move on to the second part of the show. We've made it to the halfway
Second
point.
half?
Yeah, we've made it to the half.
Welcome to the 6-hour episode.
We're definitely breaking this into parts, right? No? Okay, good. Guys, what have you bought? What are you playing, if anything? Tyler, go ahead and go.
I played through Renegade, and that game is absolutely awful. Don't play Renegade. More exciting, though, I bought some Apple II games, Johnny, the five packing games that originally came with the Apple II on tape. Since I've got the microphone out for corrections already, I think these technically were pack-ins with the Apple II Plus, but whatever, you don't care.
That is so sexy. I don't even know what to do right now.
Tell
me more about it.
Pretty exciting. I really just wanted Lemonade, but I did end up getting all 5. And fun fact, I bought that the same day I listened to Dennis's podcast, and he said, no one cares about obscure Apple II games. That's not what video game collectors care about. And it really validated how I'm collecting video games. No. More importantly than that, one of the most exciting things I think in my collection, I got a Magnavox Odyssey Run 1, and it looks brand new. And I'm extremely excited to have it because
I actually am kind of jazzed about that. You showed pictures on Instagram, and I
couldn't be more bored. Couldn't
Twitter-pated.
Couldn't imagine myself being less interested in a thing. But go on.
Oh my god. So a guy came to Game Teasy of all places, which if you don't know,
which you slammed in the earlier episode.
It is a dead forum where nothing happens. And somehow this guy named like something 1972, he found Game Teasy and he posts this like mint Magnavox Odyssey. It has components I've never seen before. So the Magnavox Odyssey comes stacked on 2 layers of styrofoam. And in between the 2 styrofoam layers is like this really thin layer of styrofoam that goes between them. And I've never seen it before on any other Magnavox Odyssey. And all the components are still in the bags and all zip tied up, which is also, the baggies alone are super rare to see too. And I got it for like the price of a really nice Run 1 Magnavox Odyssey. There were 2 different production runs of the Magnavox Odyssey. But like it looks brand new, and I'm freaking out because I love this stuff, Johnny. And even Stefan likes it. And Stefan doesn't even collect video games. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Although I did buy a couple video games recently.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you buy anything else, Tyler, or is that all you want to talk about?
That's what I wanted to talk about.
All right. Stefan, what did you buy?
Game-wise, I actually have been kind of chipping away very slowly at my Longbox PS1 set. Like the stuff that I'm missing, it just doesn't come up in Longbox, or like just will be disc only or some. So
and like everyone is collecting the Longbox set right now.
Yeah, PS1 is fire right now. I don't understand what the hell is going on.
So I got a copy of Rayman, which I was missing Longbox, and I got a copy of NBA Jam TE Longbox, and then I picked up just sort of a target of opportunity. This like local collector was like getting rid of all his like signage and stuff. So I ended up buying the coming soon Sonic Neon, the one that's like a dry erase board.
This is the stuff I know.
It's sort of. I mean, they're just displays. It's not even like weird shit. But the
stuff everybody has.
The coming soon Neon with the dry erase, and it's cool because it actually came in its shipping box and with like the original dry erase marker. So that was kind of neat. And then I bought they're in bad need of repainting, but I ended up buying both the super vintage Mario statue, the one that's like chubby and weirdly deformed. And then the slightly more modern
you
one
say,
that is not.
You say statues, but they're not really
deformed.
Statues. They're like store displays. Like
yeah, they're not. People have like, I think people assume that they're made out of plaster. They're not. They're like a vinyl. So you can totally pick one up by yourself.
And they're big. About how tall are they? So people know. So like they're like, you say a statue, I picture 12 to 16 inches. This thing is much bigger.
No, this is probably 50 inches.
Just say 3 feet, 4 feet. They're big.
4 feet. They're like as tall as your child or bigger.
They're bigger than your child.
They're my profile picture right now on Facebook is Piper hugging one, and she is dwarfed by it.
There you go.
And she is 40 inches. So, Yeah, the other stuff, I have some stuff in the works right now that I'm not going to talk about right now. But yeah, that's what I bought.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What did I buy? Hey guys, I got my Rygar lenticulars. Did it.
Yeah, both
Did
of
it.
them.
Woo.
Both of them.
Guys, these are the set to get. Did we even talk about this on the show yet?
I don't know, but everyone's like seen the post, I think. But anyways, Rygar on the PlayStation 2 had apparently a lenticular that was packed into the back behind the manual that you could slide over the front cover, and you have like so you had a lenticular cover. Like most lenticulars are pasted on the front, and that's how you find it. This one was slid into the back. So I did not know about these, and then Tyler showed one, and I was like, what the hell is this? I've had a complete Rygar for a long time because I like Rygar. So I like when this game came out, I found like a used one. I went out and bought it and then thought it was complete, never knowing there was a lenticular in there. It's not mentioned on the packaging at all. Like, so this was
like weird that it's not mentioned on the package. You think it'd be like bonus insert for your game, make it look cool.
It was like they made it and they were like trying to paste it on. They couldn't get it to work or they didn't have time. They're like, just shove it in with the manual and ship it.
That's probably what happened.
Yeah. So like, there's no, like, if you didn't know this, like, and I didn't, and I'm a person who is interested in collecting games, variants, and also Rygar and owned Rygar. And I didn't know about this until last week. So, you know, I've known about this for a week for a game I've had for over a decade. So then I went out, there's two versions, there's two different lenticulars, and no one mentions them because like half the people selling it don't even realize that they're selling one with a lenticular. You have to like, it sticks out, it's bigger than the manual. So you can, if you're looking at where the manual is, you can kind of see, and it's like PlayStation 2, it's like black border on top. You can make out if you look carefully at pictures on eBay. So that's how you do it, and do it because people are starting to catch on.
It's fun to try to figure out which variant is the little bit sticking out.
Oh, and that's how I did it because none of them were displayed, and I had to be like, I think these are the two different ones. So that's what I spent my money on. I got them both though. Did it.
It could be because it was all caps, and the CAD Gamer on Instagram sent like at least 4 people to go immediately buy both of them on eBay. So all the obvious ones were snapped up. This is not rare or valuable at all. I got both of mine for under $25. Yeah. I'm sure you did not pay any more than that.
No, I paid, I can tell you, I paid, for one, I paid $12 total that was shipped. And the other one, I paid $8.99.
Yeah.
So
they're cool. Everyone should buy them. And now we're going to spike the price, and we should all pay $150 for the Rygar PS2 game.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you're collecting for PS2 at all, like, this is like a cool game that started, you know, well, I guess in arcades, but like the best version is on NES. There's a Wii version. Like, Rygar is a, like, you know, a nostalgic title. It goes back to early 8-bit stuff. And somehow it's not like $100 on the PS2 or $50, which everything seems to be now. So this is like an easy, quick, cheap buy. I also bought a bunch of dumb like survival horror stuff and prepping for Halloween because it's that time of year. Oh
my God, it is that time of year.
Yep, it's time to start purchasing. So like I bought like Alone in the Dark. Like I targeted some PS2 stuff. I did get my Silent Hill. So I got a Silent Hill Shattered Memories, and then immediately someone contacted me from Instagram and said, hey, I also have one, but mine is sealed. Would you like a sealed copy? And then the price was not much more than just a regular copy. So now I have 2. So I have to decide what to do with that. Like, do I want to keep a sealed one, or what am I doing here? So...
Didn't you recently also randomly find a copy of Obscure in your garage?
I did find it, like another expensive one. I was like, I think I have that game, and it's like a $250. I'm like, maybe I
like
just
that was never a $250 game.
No, it was like a $20 game, and I guess it's been going up for a while. But it was not even a game on my radar because most of my like good PS2 stuff I like brought in and put in the shame room, which is just a closet on the top of my stairs, where I've got a shelf in there. So I'm like, I'll put it in the shame room. But that one didn't even make it. It sat with the bulk PS2. It was sitting with like 10 versions of Guitar Hero. That's where it was. But it, like, because there's like 4 or 5 different PS2 boxes, like, or some I had to dig through a bunch of boxes to finally be like, like, why does my list say I own this stupid game? And then finally, there it was, found it. So I bought like that. I bought like Run Like Hell. I bought some stuff I'll show at Halloween and some stuff that hasn't come. But I also bought Soccer Kid for the GBA, which has the poster. Soccer Kid, if you don't know about it, is a hard to find game on the Game Boy Advance. It's just an annoying game. It's mediocre at best. Tyler, I think you told me it used to be an Amiga game or something.
It sure is an Amiga game ported to everything.
There's a plush you can buy for it. It's not included with it, but there is a Soccer Boy plush. And Soccer Boy is not like, oh, that's a cute thing. It's like an ugly looking, weird shaped kid.
Yeah, he's not nice to look at.
No, so
at
like,
all.
You're not like, that's something I'd want a cute plush of. Mm-mm. Nope. Not at all. It's not nice looking. Anyways, and then
speaking of Super Nintendo, Soccer Kid is a platformer, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Just
it's not
like Hurricanes. What is with soccer games that aren't soccer games?
I mean, Hurricanes and Soccer Kid might be like sisters games or whatever. The other thing I've been doing, I didn't get to play much of anything lately because I've been going through all the Wii games. They weren't well cataloged. And they weren't in any kind of alphabetical order, so I've been going through like the list to find out exactly what I need in case I ever decide to finish this stupid set. And in so doing, I've since bought 4 Wii games. Bought a Wii game for the first time
back on track.
Since like 2017. I purchased a Wii game. So here we are. I'm doing it again.
I'm never going to play a video game ever again. I'm so busy with work. This is like literally sitting with you people is the only thing that I do for myself all week.
Great.
I'm so sorry that we're at
sad. What about the World of Warcraft 7?
I haven't been playing.
What about the mounts? Don't you got to get mounts? Didn't they just release a new one?
No, I got my 400 achievement mount and then I stopped.
That's what the people wanted to know. All right.
Speaking of MMOs, Soldier Boy has been streaming RuneScape on Twitch, and he's like seriously playing it. So if you want to watch some RuneScape, go watch Soldier Boy.
Superman. Oh, okay. That's all I got on that. Guys, anything else?
Worth it.
Shout out to our buddy CWR2 for his new milestone in his Super Mario Duck Hunt extravaganza. I think he's now up to like 380?
I don't know, like his like 340 or something.
So many.
He's got a lot of Mario Duck
342 Mario Duck Hunt.
Yep.
Is that a milestone?
Yeah, well, it's a shelf. He's got a shelf built for it, and the number he wants just fills the shelf.
380.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That is a perfect goal. I approve of that goal.
He has the complete set, as he puts it, is 380.
Yeah. So, people are like, how'd you?
38 more to go, buddy. Yeah. We believe.
People ask him, how'd you get to that number? And he's like, that's how many will fit on the shelf. So that's the set number.
That's so perfect.
Yeah. I'm happy to say that a couple of my Mario Duck Hunts are in there. Some extra, so that's cool. I'm not mine anymore, but I helped contribute to that, so that's cool. And guys, before we get out, I do want to say, like, if you live in Los Angeles, things are starting to like close down again, or in California, if you're in any of the impacted states by COVID. I'm not interested in the politics around COVID. If you think it's a hoax or anything like that, I don't really care. The reality is that businesses are shutting down again, and it's really easy to go to eBay, but you still have a lot of local sellers who are making efforts in their game shops to try and stay afloat. So remember them, give them a call. You've got places, probably not too far from you, Tyler. I know you have some local shops. I know you like Forgotten Freshness, and I just ordered something from them as well. So like, look to these people who could potentially get impacted. Before you go right to eBay, check them out. For me, it's like Lost Levels. They have 2 locations out here. And like, I was looking for PS2 games. And so I hit them up, said, hey, show me what you got for PS2. And they were gracious enough to send me some pictures and let me do my shopping, from my phone at home, rather than me having to go down there or having to, if their shop has to close. So just a message to remember your local game shops in these times. If everyone's going to be crazy at home buying games, then, if the least you could do is reach out to your local shops and see if they can help you before you go right to eBay.
Game Dude's website says they're open.
Yeah, Game Dude's website says they're open, and I called and it confirmed that they're open, but none of their price sheets are online.
Yep, Save Point Video Games is open too. I asked him for a price. I thought I was trying to do the thing you're saying. I was trying to help them out, and I was asking them to look at something I might have saw on Instagram, and he didn't even get back to me. He said we were so slammed, I could not even respond to my messages. I'm like, all right, I guess you're doing all right with all these crazy people out there packing into video game shops during the COVID.
Well, that's true, because a lot of places reopened, and then everything got crazy busy, but now we're hitting this, like, unfortunate, like, well, things are closing back down again. So if we get, who knows how long that's going to last, but just check them out, guys. Well, I think I said this message kind of early into when this onslaught happened. Again, I don't care on political views. I don't care if you want to wear a mask or anything. That's not what this is about. The reality is things will get closed, and you don't want your game store to go out of business. You will need them when things open back up. So try to remember them. That's all I got on that. Guys, anything else before we get out of here?
Find us on Instagram. Rate us on iTunes. I'm so sorry. This show is 3 hours long, everybody. This might be the longest show ever.
It is the longest one ever. God damn it. Tyler, just don't, you know what? Just don't publish it. We're done.
Solid hour and a half, right, Johnny?
You think I'm going to spend 6 hours editing this show? I'm done. We're going to re-record this. We're going to wrap it up in an hour and a half.
Just put it out.
Yeah. Remember, I said we'd be done in an hour and a half, which guaranteed it would be double that time.
Oh my God.
I gave it the kiss of death right from the beginning.
Just put it out raw. Now that we have a benchmark for what our competition is, then
now we're the edited show, and they're the we're just gonna talk show because we're so good at talking. We don't even need to have to edit. See, I'm gonna edit that out because I stumbled over that line and it sounded weird, Stefan. Let's end the show, Johnny. It's 3:07 a.m.
All right, guys. Do you want to tell them where we can find you on Instagram and the other places? Stefan, go.
You can find me on places like the YouTubes and the Instagrams at Archon1981, ARCHON 1981. You can also find me on Twitter at ArtOfNP, like Nintendo Power. That's actually probably where I'm most active right now, so it's probably easiest to find me there.
All right, Twitter is a cancerous butthole, and you should not go there. It is literally the worst place of social media right now. Tyler, where can we find you?
Yep. I'm usually on Instagram and Video Game Sage. I am Default Jen. I also have a YouTube channel.
I am an oasis of Twitter.
Okay, cool. My name is Johnny_Iucci, and you can find me here on Instagram. I do have YouTube, but you will only see things like Harry Potter videos, which you probably don't care about because we got the new ornament. So someone asked me.
I watched it.
Did you? Yeah, a friend.
The Harry Potter ornaments, and you put them together, and they recreate the movie scenes.
Yep,
or they just talk to each other.
Yeah, they just talk to each other. So a friend asked me to see it, so I said, all right, I'll they're already set up because my wife and I wanted to check them out. So I just set up the tripod and filmed a video, and then put it on my YouTube so they could watch it. So I don't recommend my YouTube for video game content. Currently, there is some interesting old stuff that you might be interested in, but the new stuff, it was like me doing unpacking stuff for my baby's nursery, and shout out to Super Sparkster and his new little baby Elizabeth Grace, I believe is her name. So congratulations to Super Sparkster and family, now that their little baby is home. So that's all I got. Anything else, Tyler? Where are you?
Johnny, did Arkanoid Do It Again ever come with the SNES mouse?
Oh my, what are you doing right now, Tyler?
I'm just trying to make sure we didn't miss anything.
I have never seen one with the mouse.
Okay, that's our show.
Okay, bye.
Wait, did we mention Player's Choice games this entire episode?